Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're all doing well, inshallah, and welcome to this webinar, The Four Great Imams, brought to you by Q-Iman. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much for your patience. And we are going to get started very, very shortly, inshallah. Just waiting for a few more people to join us. Mashallah, we had an amazing response with more than 500 registrations for this webinar. Alhamdulillah, almost 200 are joining us online right now, and others will be joining us a bit later on, inshallah. My name is Shabir, and I am an instructor at Q-Iman, which is an institute based in East London, focusing on the Arabic language and the Islamic sciences. And alhamdulillah, throughout Ramadan, we've been running some regular webinars. Last week, we had our sisters only webinar on the fiqh of menstruation. And the week before that, towards the beginning of Ramadan, we had our webinar on preparing for Ramadan with myself and Ustad Abu Zuhair Farhan, who will also be joining us very shortly. So to those of you who are with us right now, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. Hope Ramadan is going well, inshallah. This, of course, is a webinar which will be covering the four great Imams, right? Who are the four great Imams? There's many great Imams, of course, right? You know, we don't restrict it to four, alhamdulillah. Our deen is such that we have such rich scholarship and so many great scholars over the centuries, whether they were experts in the field of hadith or in the field of tafsir or in the field of you know, the Arabic language or in the field of fiqh and so on and so forth, right? We've had, you know, some of the most amazing, most intellectual, most inspiring, most righteous people. However, these four great Imams, the ones that we're going to be discussing today in particular, these Imams are the founders of what today we know as, you know, the main madh-habs, the main schools of thought in Islamic law. So we have Imam Abu Hanifah rahimahullah, we have Imam Malik rahimahullah, we have Imam Ash-Shafi'i rahimahullah, and we also have Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal rahimahullah. These four respectively are the founders of the great madh-habs, as we mentioned, right? The Hanafi madhhab, the Maliki madhhab, the Shafi'i madhhab, and the Hanbali madhhab, which these are attributed to, you know, these great Imams. And today we're going to be speaking about not only them as individuals, not only them as Imams, but also taking lessons and taking inspiration from their lives, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So, you know, we will be joined by some of our other Q-Iman instructors, which include Ustad Salih al-Bukhari, Ustad Abu Zuhair, and our senior scholar at Q-Iman, Sheikh Abu al-Barakat Mishkat Hassan, as some of you may know as, in short, Sheikh Mishkat, from Al-Madinah Al-Munawwara. So this, inshallah, will be really interesting. We've got about half an hour each to cover these Imams. You know, you're going to see the slides, of course, so we're going to try and keep this as interactive as possible. For those of you who are using Zoom perhaps for the first time, you would know, of course, that as we've already mentioned, you know, please do keep your audio and your videos off throughout the remainder of today's webinar. And also, if you have any questions, there is the chat option, which probably you've already come across. So you can just send in questions. Those questions will come through to us. I will be able to see it. The instructors will be able to see it, and admin will be able to see it. So if you have any questions, inshallah, please do ask, not a problem at all. Please, of course, be sensible in the way that you word things, inshallah. Don't forget, it's the month of Ramadan. Most of us right now, if you're in the UK, we're fasting. So let's be sensible, inshallah ta'ala, which I know all of you will be, no doubt. And that's the only thing, really. You can just use the chat feature to ask questions. We will have a short Q&A slot towards the end. Apart from that, we're going to try to keep this as smooth as possible, going through each Imam with each instructor. And we're going to begin with Imam Abu Hanifah, which inshallah I myself will be covering. So we have, alhamdulillah, more than 200 of you who are joining from all across the world. And we are going to get our webinar started, inshallah. very, very shortly. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما وعملا بفضلك يا أرحم الراحمين آمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته once again. And welcome to those of you who are joining us. As mentioned, we are going to be covering the 4 great Imams, inshallah, starting with the great Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah ta'ala. Why are we starting with Imam Abu Hanifa? As you're going to see, out of the 4 great Imams, he is actually the most senior of them. And he, of course, himself is the earliest of them. And we're going to cover some aspects of his life in this short period of time that I have. SubhanAllah, there's so much to say, and I wish I had a lot of time to cover everything, but time is of the essence, so we're going to get straight into it, inshallah. Many of you have heard of this name, Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah. We're going to find out a bit more about him right now, inshallah. So we're going to cover quickly his early life. Who was he, what his name was, and so on, right? So Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, his name is, right, not Abu Hanifa, right? In fact, his real name is Nu'man. His real name is Nu'man bin Thabit bin Zuta. So Nu'man, that's his real name. He is the son of Thabit, who is the son of Zuta, right? And as you will see, right, Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he lived for 70 years. He lived for a period of 70 years, right? Which is, average lifespan, we could say, born in the year 80 Hijri. So what does that mean? So that's, in terms of the Islamic calendar, the Hijri calendar, he was born 80 years after the Hijrah, which would roughly be about 70 years after the demise of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So as you can see, that's not actually a huge gap. That's not really a huge gap between our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's demise and Imam Abu Hanifa being born. 70 years isn't that long if you think about it. He's a very, very early scholar, very, very early scholar, right? From the the first generations, right? Not exactly the first, but the earlier generations, no doubt. And we're going to speak about his status, meaning what do we consider him as? Do we consider him as a Sahabi? Do we consider him as a Tabi'i? Do we consider him as a follower of the Tabi'in? Right? Which one is he? So we'll discuss that. And he passed away in the year 150 Hijri, and we're going to also be discussing a bit about his death as well. Originally, Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he is from Persia, right? So though he was born in Iraq, right, which we would know as Kufa, he's originally, meaning his grandfather was from Persia, modern day Afghanistan. So if we have any Afghanis here, mashallah, then you inshallah share something there with Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, right? Modern day Afghanistan, originally from Persia, right? And his grandfather, which we mentioned, his name is Zuta, right? So his grandfather's name is Zuta, which, by the way, some say that he changed his name. This was originally a Persian name, but he changed his name. The Arabic of his name was Nu'man. So some actually say that, the same name as Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he was named after his grandfather, who was also called Nu'man. So that's another fact for you. So this, great individual, right, who became Muslim, settled in Kufa in Iraq. And this was around the time where Ali radiallahu an, the great companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu an, karramallahu wajhah, he actually moved the Khilafah to this region from Medina because of the fitna and the strife at the time. He had to relocate the headquarters of the Khilafah, and he relocated to Iraq, right? So what happened is, around that time, okay, so I think in the time of Umar radiallahu anh, that region was conquered, okay, and that's when Zuta, the grandfather of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, would have become a Muslim. He would have accepted Islam, and then later he relocated, he migrated to Kufa in Iraq. And of course, this is where Imam Abu Hanifa was later born. So Zulqa's son, meaning the father of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, who is known as Thabit, it is said, it's famously known about him, that he actually was taken by his own father. So we're talking now about the father of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, not Imam Abu Hanifa himself, okay? So we're talking about the father of Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, Thabit, okay? He was taken to Ali radiallahu anh. So he actually met Ali radiallahu anh when he was a lot younger. So he meets Ali radiallahu anh, this great companion, and Ali radiallahu anh made dua for him, and made dua for his offspring, and said, may Allah bless your children, may Allah bless your offspring. This was Ali making dua for the father of who? Of Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. And the scholars say that, you know, inshallah, we hope that it was through the dua of the great companion Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu anh that, you know, Allah did accept this dua, and Allah did bless the lineage of this man Thabit, and then obviously he becomes the father of this great Imam Nu'man, or otherwise known as Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. So another interesting fact there. Now, Imam Abu Hanifa, of course, did not meet Ali radiallahu anh. This was his father. However, what do we know about Abu Hanifa rahimahullah? Growing up, okay, he comes from quite a wealthy background, and he was known to be a trader. He was a merchant. He was a businessman, in other words, and he was very good at business. He was a very intelligent man. You know, when you're good at business, right? You can't just fake it in business. You can't just fluke it in business. You can't just, you know, somehow, you know, just get lucky. There's very few people that do that. In order to be a very good, shrewd businessman, you have to have a lot of intellect. Not only this, but you need to be a people's person. You need to be very sociable. You need to know how to communicate with people. You need to know what to say to people. You need to be quite eloquent in that sense, right? And like we said, you need to have a lot of intellect. So Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, very intellectual man growing up, okay, young man we're talking about. And he was a trader in clothes. So in Arabic, he's known as a khazzaz, a trader in clothes, and, you know, selling garments and cloths and so on and so forth, right? So this is what he was known for. So he would travel a lot, because businessmen, they don't just stay in one place. Businessmen, they travel a lot. So already what we're seeing about Abu Hanifa rahimahullah is that he wasn't just someone who stayed in Iraq in one place and kind of, you know, didn't really mix with the people. No, what we're already learning about him is that he had to travel for his business. He had to mix with the people, right? A lot of people already knew him, right? And he was very intellectual, and he was very good at what he did, right? So he was very successful, and he became, as we know, very well off. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah is not like some of the other Imams. He was very well off. He was self-sufficient, right? He was a businessman, right, by profession. And this is something that we learn about Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, you know, growing up into his early life. Now, of course, the most important thing for us is, when it comes to Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, what was his journey like as a student? Like, what was it that inspired him to become who he was, the great scholar, the great Imam that we know him as today? And if we're saying that he was a businessman, then what exactly happened? Was he like a part-time businessman, part-time student? Did he leave the business, right? What exactly was happening? So obviously there's a story behind this, right? How did Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, you know, kind of shift, and what was that transition like from being a businessman and a trader and a merchant to now becoming a student of knowledge? So it is said that Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he met this great scholar of Iraq. He was well known. His name was Imam al-Sha'bi rahimahullah. And one day Imam al-Sha'bi, he sees Imam Abu Hanifa walking. And look, he's heard about Imam Abu Hanifa. He can see, and you know, people of knowledge, they can tell when they see someone who is intellectual. They can tell when they see someone who's quite talented. So what happens is, Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he's walking. Imam al-Sha'bi spots him and asks him, where are you going? Where are you heading? And Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah says, you know, I'm going to this marketplace. I'm going to do what I normally do. I'm going to sell and trade. And Imam al-Sha'bi says, that's not what I meant. I didn't mean, where are you going? I meant, who are you studying with? Right? Who are you sitting with? Which scholars are you sitting with and studying with? And Imam Abu Hanifa said, you know, I'm not studying with anyone, right? I'm not studying with anyone. Like, I'm just a businessman, and I'm quite happy with the way things are going right now. So this scholar, Imam al-Sha'bi rahimahullah, he says, alayka bi talab al-ilm. He says, look, you look like an intelligent person. you should go and seek knowledge. Go and sit with the scholars. Go and learn from them. Okay, and this is what sparked, there's that spark in the life of Imam Hanifa. It was actually from this great scholar of Iraq, Imam al-Sha'bi rahimahullah, right? And sometimes that's all it takes, by the way. It just takes, that one, it just takes that one kind of, spark, or that one word of encouragement from someone who's more knowledgeable and experienced than you to motivate you. So Imam Hanifa thought to himself, you know what? Yeah, why don't I? So he didn't leave business, right? So don't think that he left everything behind. In fact, because what do good businessmen do? When they're busy, they employ other people to take care of their business. So he didn't leave business. In fact, Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he just employed other people to take care of his business. And what did he end up doing? He ended up studying. So he ended up sitting with some of the scholars and learning. And remember, we said because he's quite an intellectual individual, right? And because he's very, he's got that knack for, speaking and so on, right? So one of the first areas of interest for him, and not just interest, it was actually necessity, that he became known to be someone who was very good in debating, and he became very well known in the field of theology, right? Which today we would know as things like kalam and aqidah and so on, right? So he was very good at debating, and he was known to be a master in theology. Why? Like we said, is necessity as well. What does this mean? Is because where Imam Abu Hanifa was situated in Iraq, right? So you have Kufa, you have Basra, right? Now, these areas, this region is surrounded by, a lot of sects and a lot of different groups, which perhaps in, for example, Medina, right, where Imam Malik was, and we're going to come to Imam Malik next, inshallah, where Imam Malik was, there wasn't this situation. Like Medina was okay. Medina is Medina. It's the land of Hijrah. It's the land of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. But where Imam Abu Hanifa was, necessity dictates that because of the different sects around him, whether it's the Mu'tazila, whether it's the Khawarij, right, whether it's the Shia, whether it's different groups, he now had to. And there were a lot of atheists as well, right? There was a lot of people who were not, didn't have any faith. So because of this, Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he became very skilled in theology and debating. So he would literally go, he would travel, he would go around Kufa, he would go to Basra, and he would debate with these groups. And he was known to be a master in debating. Like, it was very difficult to win over Imam, like it was very difficult to defeat Imam Abu Hanifa in a debate. Right? So this is why Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he took up theology and debating and kalam and so on and so forth, right? So he was known for this. Something else interesting about Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, by the way, something very different to the other scholars like Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah and Imam Malik, right? Very different to these, is that he started fairly late. When it came to his studying, he started fairly late. Fairly late meaning that, a lot of the other scholars, Imam Shafi'i, for example, by the age of 10, by the age of like 10, 11, he was like Hafiz of the Quran. He knew his Arabic language. He went to study with Imam Malik rahimahullah. We're going to come to that, right? But when it came to Imam Abu Hanifa, he started actually in his 20s, right? So we're talking early 20s towards mid 20s. That's quite late for a scholar. So again, there's some encouragement for us, inshallah. It's never too late to begin studying. So what happened is he becomes known for debating and so on, right? And then what happens one day is that Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he's sitting in the masjid where, in the masjid there would be different circles. So one circle dealing with fiqh, another circle with tafsir, another circle dealing with kalam and aqidah and so on. So Imam Abu Hanifa, he's in his circle. A woman comes to him and asks him a question about divorce. How does a man give divorce, the sunnah way of divorce and so on. Imam Abu Hanifa, he doesn't have knowledge in fiqh at this point. So he says, listen, I don't have knowledge in this, but not too far from here, there's the circle of a great scholar of Iraq. His name is Hamad bin Abi Sulaiman. Go to Hamad and ask him about this particular, ask him regarding this mas'ala, this question. And when you find out the answer, come back to me and also tell me, because I'm interested in knowing it. So she went, she asked Hamad, and she got her answer. She came back to Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. She shared the answer. And again, there was a spark where Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he started thinking to himself, why am I busying myself so much in arguments and debates and theology and this and that? It's important. But these things, fiqh is what dictates your worship with Allah. It's what dictates your way of life. Like without fiqh, you won't even know how to get married, how to divorce, how to pray, what breaks your prayer, how to make wudu, how to, give, how much zakat to give, right? You won't know any of these things. And, debating and stuff, okay, it's okay, but really, like, that's not going to benefit you in the long run. So Imam Abu Hanifa now decided to go and study with this scholar Hammad. This was, by the way, one of his main teachers, Hammad ibn Abi Sulaiman, rahimahullah. His main teacher was him. And it is said that he studied for more than 20 years with Hammad. More than 20 years. In fact, it's even said that in between he kind of stopped studying, or actually there was one time where Hammad went away, and then Imam Hanifa had to take his place like about 10 years in. And then when he came back, when Hammad came back, he asked Imam Abu Hanifa that, how did it go? So Imam Abu Hanifa summarized, there were like 60 different questions I was asked, and these are the answers that I gave for the 60. And Hammad said to him that out of 60 questions, I agree with 40 answers that you gave, but in 20, I disagree with you. And he gave him the answers. So this humbled Imam Abu Hanifa. And he said, you know what, forget it. I'm going to just study with him until he passes away. So Imam Abu Hanifa studied with Hammad until he passed away for a good 22 years, showing you, right, until roughly the age of 40, Imam Abu Hanifa studied with Hammad and learned everything that he could, took everything that he could from him. And then he becomes a master of fiqh. And now he has his own circle of students. And these students weren't just normal students. These were some amazing students, right? We'll talk about who some of his students were. So this was the journey of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, becoming a great student and then a great scholar, studying for 20 plus years, right? Becoming very, very well versed in fiqh, right, and Islamic law and theology and jurisprudence, right? All of these areas. And now Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he's ready to take over when Hammad passes away, and he's ready to become the next, great teacher and Imam. So who were some of his teachers? Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he was influenced, no doubt, by the likes of Umar ibn al-Khattab. He never met him, but he was no doubt influenced by some of the usul, the principles, and the way of thinking of Umar radiallahu anhu. Umar radiallahu anhu was very forward thinking from out of the other companions. So he was influenced by him. He was influenced by Ali radiallahu anhu, like we said, because Ali set his base of Khilafah in Iraq. Ibn Abbas, at the same time of Ali, he was made the governor of Basra, right, which again isn't far from Abu Hanifa. Again, he doesn't meet Ibn Abbas, another great scholar of the Quran from the Sahaba, but he's influenced by him. And no doubt he's influenced by the great Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu. And if you look at this chain, that the student of Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu is Alqama. The student of Alqama is Ibrahim al-Nakha'i. Again, like, Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he took a lot from Ibrahim al-Nakha'i. The student of Ibrahim al-Nakha'i was Hammad, the teacher of Abu Hanifa, and then his student is Abu Hanifa. So you can see that there's not much, there's only a few names between Abu Hanifa and the Sahaba and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? No more than 4 to 5 names, right? Absolute maximum. So you can tell that he's one of the early scholars. Some say he had around 4,000 teachers. Others say 400, like, proper teachers, and 4,000 meaning, when we say teachers, again, it could just mean that he met someone and that's it, he considered them as his teacher. Doesn't mean that he sat in 4,000 different classes, but it said he had 4,000 teachers, which again shows you the extent of his traveling and the extent of his yearning for knowledge and zeal for knowledge, right? So it's also said, many scholars say, that he met the great companion Sahabi Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu. Okay, so he meets Anas bin Malik, which makes him what? It makes him a tabi'i. So you have the first generation, right, the Sahaba, right, and then straight after that you have the tabi'in, those who never met the Prophet ﷺ, but they studied with the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. So a lot of people say that Imam Abu Hanifa was a tabi'i. Why? Because he met Anas bin Malik. Anas bin Malik, he's one of the last companions to pass away. He had a very long life because of the dua that the Prophet ﷺ made for him. He had a very long life. And he passed away maybe 80, 90 years after the death of the Prophet ﷺ. So it was very, very likely that Anas bin Malik and Imam Abu Hanifa, they met. And it's said that they met when Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he went for Hajj and he meets Anas, and some say that he even transmitted hadith from him. There is some difference here, by the way. There is some difference whether exactly is he a tabi'i or not. No doubt, even if we take the view he wasn't a tabi'i, he comes in the 3rd generation. Why is this important? Because the Prophet ﷺ said that khayrul quruni qarni, that the best of generations is my generation, meaning the Sahaba. ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُم, then the Tabi'een, ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُم, and then those who follow the Tabi'een. So what we're saying is that Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah no doubt fell into the best of generations, that the Prophet ﷺ said these will be the best of generations. So this is very important, because we're not saying that this scholar came much later. No, this scholar was very early. He was perhaps even a tabi'i, and he was very closely linked to the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, which again, gives him extra added value and status in our eyes. Some of his teachers include Ata bin Abi Rabah, who again was the great Imam of Mecca. He is a freed slave from Africa. He becomes one of the best and most knowledgeable Imams of Mecca. Qatada, Nafi', the student of and the freed slave of Ibn Umar, right, the son of Umar ibn al-Khattab, Imam al-Sha'bi, Hamad bin Abi Sulaiman, and many others. So in terms of the Tabi'een, he studied with a lot of the Tabi'een, right? And his students include the likes of Imam Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani, the great Imam Muhammad, the great Imam Abu Yusuf, Qadi, Imam Abu Yusuf, Imam Zufar, the master of Qiyas, of analogy, Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, right? Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, he is, known that out of all of the, narrators of hadith, right? He is one that no one could find anything on him. No one could find any issues with Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, Fudail bin Iyad, Hassan bin Ziyad al-Lu'lu'i, some of these famous students of his, right? So this is, Imam Abu Hanifa, his life as a teacher. These were some of his students, right? Showing you the great status that he had, the great position that he had, and he carried on teaching, right? He carried on teaching for many, many years. And if you look at his timetable in his day, it's amazing, like the way that the amount of durus and lessons that he would have, how he would teach, the amount that he would study. And we're going to come to his personal life, what we can learn from his personal life. But about the death of Imam Abu Hanifa, as we said, that he died in the year 150 Hijri, but he died in prison, subhanallah. So what happened here? How did he end up in prison? Did he commit a crime? He never, he of course did not commit any crime. And it's even said that he continued to teach in prison. He was allowed to carry on teaching even when he was in prison towards the, this is when he was quite an old man, okay, in his 70s, right, fairly old, but he carries on teaching his students even in prison, showing his dedication as a teacher. It was basically the Khalifa at the time, okay, because by this time, Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he was now in the era of the Abbasids, right? So prior to them, you had the Umayyads, right, the likes of, starting with Muawiyah, right, bin Abi Sufyan, and then you had, many others who came after him. So actually, this was the Umayyads just before. So towards the beginning of his life, you had the Umayyads, and then later on in his life, you had the Abbasids who had, taken the stronghold, and then you had, one of the first of the, leaders from the Abbasids, the Caliph Abu Ja'far al-Mansur. Of course, later on you had, the golden ages, and the Abbasids made huge contributions, no doubt, to the Islamic world and to the world at large. But this Caliph Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, he had some issues with Imam Hanifa, not from the offset, issues because he wanted Imam Abu Hanifa to be employed by him. Such a great Imam and scholar, the Khalifa would naturally want to make him the main Imam of that region, or make him the main Qadi of the region, right? The main Qadi, the one that issues fatwas. And literally the Qadi, by the way, at the time would probably have just as much power as the Khalifa himself, right? Issue fatwas, right? If the Qadi says this person deserves to be sentenced to death, that's exactly what's going to happen. Has a lot of power. However, what happens is that Imam Abu Hanifa, he doesn't want to take up this position. He doesn't want to be too close with the government. And what happens is, the Khalifa, Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, he even gives a lot of money to Abu Hanifa. But Imam Abu Hanifa rejects. He refuses to take it. Why? Again, by the way, showing you that because he was self-sufficient, he was a very settled businessman, very successful businessman. He had money. He didn't need the money from the government. So he never took money from the government. He refused, and he refused to take up position. He took some minor positions, by the way, but he didn't become like the Qadi of the region of Kufa or of Basra, as an example. So he basically got rid of, he didn't want anything to do with. And because of this, there was some friction between the caliph of the time and Imam Abu Hanifa. So it's said that he was placed into prison, eventually because of this. And some even say that he was eventually poisoned. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he was poisoned, which caused his death, right, at the age of 80 years old. Wallahu a'lam whether he was poisoned or not. But regardless, as we know, that he had reached an old age by this time. So there's no doubt that he was already he was already quite old by this age, right? Near the age of 70, sorry. So that's why he passed away in prison, however. So again, showing you the sacrifice that Imam Abu Hanifa made, showing you his principles. He was a very principled man, showing you how well off he was as well. Subhanallah, when Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he passed away, it is said that his janazah had to be repeated so many times over a number of days, because you had tens of thousands of people, excuse me, tens of thousands of people, they attended the janazah. And because it was just too much to accommodate, they had to keep repeating his janazah over and over again. And it lasted for a number of days, subhanAllah, showing you the impact that Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah had on the people around him, his name that had spread throughout, right? And how people held him in very high regard and high esteem, right? So this was the great Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. His janazah was repeated. This is what you call a legacy, right? And his legacy, by the way, was continued by his students. That at this point, he wasn't exactly known to be the founder of the Hanafi madh-hab, because the Hanafi madh-hab was spread by his students like Imam Abu Yusuf, Imam Muhammad, and others, right? They went and spread this madhab to all corners of the world. And subhanAllah, his madhab is now adopted by, we could say, the majority of, as in like in terms of those who adhere and follow the madhab of, in terms of the Hanafi madhab, because it was adopted by the Ottomans, right? The Ottomans. And the Ottoman was a huge empire, as you would know, because they adopted this. Now today, subhanAllah, you go to places like Turkey, you go to places like Afghanistan, you go to places like in the Indian subcontinent, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, you have majority Hanafis there, right? Majority are followers of the Hanafi madhab. So you could say the majority they follow Hanafi madhab. That does not take anything away from the other madhabs, by the way. The other madhabs, right, have their followers from different parts of the world. I'm just saying that in terms of the majority, that's what it seems till today. That's just the reality of things. And the area where he's buried today in Iraq is known as Al-A'zamiyya. Why is it known as Al-A'zamiyya? A'zamiyya comes from the word Azim, because Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he was known as Al-Imam Al-A'zam, the great Imam or the greatest Imam. This was the title, not obviously that he gave himself, but this was the title given to him by others, by other scholars, right? So this is amazing. The area now is known as A'zamiyya, right? The great area. Why? Because the great Imam Abu Hanifa is buried there. I want to quickly run through some lessons from his life that we can take, because this is most important, right? So it's said, very famously known about Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, as mentioned in Siyar A'lam al-Nubala, that Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he would perform the morning prayer, the Fajr prayer, with the same wudu from Isha, from the night. And he did this for 40 years. 40 years he prayed Fajr with the same wudu from Isha. Now some of you might think, well, why is he not making wudu again for? Right? Why is he not why is he not making wudu? What's wrong? To show you something. It's going to show you something, which is that he never slept. Because if you sleep, khalas, that's it, right? He never slept during the night. Okay, and because he would stand the night in prayer for a long period of time, by the time he'd finish his prayer, it's Fajr time now. By the time he finishes reciting the Quran, it's Fajr time now, right? So he has to pray Fajr, showing you, subhanAllah, the piety of this individual, the righteousness of this individual, right? It's, subhanAllah, it's amazing. 40 years standing that night in prayer. Imam Abu Yusuf, his famous student, he said that Imam Abu Hanifa, he would finish the Quran at least once in his prayers each night. Imagine, he would stand in the night in prayer and he would do one khatam of the Quran. And to go even further, it is said that Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he completed the Quran 7,000 times in his life, meaning he did 7,000 khatams of the Quran in his life, subhanallah. If he lived from an average lifespan, subhanAllah, think about how many times he would have been reciting the Quran. Some also say that Imam Hanifah rahimahullah, from a young age, he was performing Hajj, and he would go for Hajj every year. Some say that he actually performed Hajj 55 times in his lifetime. I'll repeat that. Some say that he performed Hajj 55 times in his whole entire lifetime, subhanAllah. Again, showing you like this man wasn't like a normal man, right? Amazing how many times he would perform Hajj. Also, we learn that he told his son Hamad. By the way, his son is called Hamad, the son of Abu Hanifa. Hamad was his teacher's name, and out of his love and respect for his teacher, he names his son Hamad. And he told his son, don't debate others for the sake of debating. And this is a lesson that we can all learn from him today, is that Hamad was very good at debating like his father. He took after his father. But Imam Hanifa said, listen, the difference between your debating today and my debating back in the days was that we used to debate for the sake of upholding the truth, the haqq, so the truth could prevail. We did it for the sake of Allah. And today you guys debate, right, based on ego. You know, you want to be better than this individual. You want to, overcome this individual. You want to prove that you're the better one, more knowledgeable one. So he taught us a very powerful lesson that don't just debate for the sake of debating and winning arguments. Rather, you should debate if there's a reason to do so in order for the truth to prevail, and if you're in a position to do so. And as we know, something amazing about Imam Hanifa is that he was very successful in this life, meaning he was a successful businessman, very well off, very wealthy. Everyone knew who he was, and just showing us that there's nothing wrong with this, nothing wrong with being wealthy. In fact, he used his wealth, and he was known to be a very generous man. He would give his wealth away. In fact, his own student, Imam Muhammad, who we mentioned already, he was funded by Imam Abu Hanifa. That one day, Imam Muhammad, he disappeared from Imam Abu Hanifa's lessons, and Imam Abu Hanifa, he basically asked, he went to his house and asked his father that, he was attending my lessons for some time. Where's he gone? Why has he stopped attending? And his father said, listen, he can't just keep studying. He needs to work. He needs to earn for the family, for the household. So Imam Abu Hanifa said, no, right? He doesn't need to work. What I'm going to do is I will give him a stipend. I will give him money every single month, or every so often, and that would be enough money to cover wages and to cover whatever he needs to provide for his family, as long as he carries on studying. Look at his concern for his students. Look at his generosity, subhanallah. I'm going to end with this, and this is a very important. I want you all to pay attention to this point. Why are we ending with this? What do the other Imams say about Abu Hanifa? Why are we ending with this point for? Because subhanAllah, when we think of the Imams, especially the four Imams like Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi'i, Ahmad bin Hanbal, and the other Imams that came after as well, sometimes what we think is that these Imams, they hated each other. These Imams just wanted to disagree with each other. These Imams just, fought each other. These Imams, didn't like each other. This is what we think. We think that Imam Abu Hanifa, the founder of the Hanafi madh-hab, Imam Shafi'i, founder of the Shafi'i, they disagree in a lot of things. That means they didn't like each other. They used to, cuss each other, and so on. We think this, right? We assume this, that the Imams didn't like each other. No, far from it, subhanAllah. Far from it. Right? In fact, yes, they had disagreements, but they had disagreements, based on their own ijtihad, based on their own research, their own extrapolations, based on their own, studying, right? They came to certain conclusions. And yes, they differed with one another, but they had the utmost respect for one another. Sometimes they would even take each other's opinions. Some of their students even studied with, one another. Like Imam Abu Hanifa's students studied with Imam Shafi'i, studied with Imam Malik, right? So we shouldn't think that these people hated each other. No, nowadays we're the ones that we may come forward with certain sectarian views. We come forward and we try to create fitna, we try to create problems between different madh-habs and groups. No, this is completely wrong. This is completely wrong. Okay, so what do some of the Imams say about him? Imam Shafi'i himself, he says, "An-nasu iyalun ala fiqhi Abi Hanifa." The people, they rely on the fiqh of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. Imagine the great Imam Shafi'i, who by the way was born just after Imam Abu Hanifa passes away, so they never met each other. But when he studied with the students of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, when he met them and he saw, wow, you took your knowledge from this great man, okay, his fiqh is amazing. The way he's known as, you know, the one who categorized the Islamic, you know, sciences, so to speak, right? So he was known as the one who categorized this. So subhanallah, amazing that Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, he was praised by Imam Shafi'i, who basically said that he's an amazing person. We're just going to end with these last few points. Imam Malik said about Imam Abu Hanifa, and it said that both of them met, by the way. Imam Malik met Imam Abu Hanifa when Imam Abu Hanifa went for Hajj. Imam Malik says about Imam Abu Hanifa that he was such a man, he was such an amazing man, and he was so good at like debating and convincing you, that had he claimed that this pillar, so if you look at a pillar that's made of like iron, right? He said if he claimed that this pillar was made of gold, he would convince you that it was made of gold. Like, even though it's not made of gold, it's made of iron. But he's saying he's so good, Imam Abu Hanifa, that he could convince you that this something is made of gold when it's not. That is. Sharik says that he was a man of prolonged silence. He didn't speak as much, but he had a lot of intellect. So when he did speak, he spoke with a lot of wisdom. And Ali bin Asim rahimahullah, he says that if the knowledge of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah were to be compared to the rest of the people of his time, right? If you compared the knowledge of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah to the knowledge of everyone else in his time, he said his knowledge would outweigh the knowledge of the rest of the people of his time, subhanAllah. Look at the praise that these great Imams had for Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, right? Look at the way that they looked up to him. Look at the way that they learnt from him. They didn't just criticize him. Yeah, there were times where they would have criticized, naturally, because you're not going to agree on everything, and that's okay, right? In hadith, it's very natural for people to criticize, right? Based on you know, how reliable is this, how authentic is this, that's okay. But they didn't personally. Everyone agrees, the ummah agrees that Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi'i, these great Imams, they were, you know, the greatest Imams of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, right? They are the leading figures, they are the founders of the madh-habs, and they are people that we should learn from and take inspiration from. So this is all, you know, to do with Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullahu ta'ala. And that's where I end. Of course, for Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, that's it from me. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to learn from the life of Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to become like these people. Whether we follow their madhab or not, it doesn't matter. May Allah allow us to adopt their righteousness. May Allah allow us to take inspiration from their lives, regardless of whether we follow them. That's right now, that's not the important point. The important point is taking from them, learning from them, being inspired by them. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. So just a few things, inshallah, to mention is that there's still more to come, of course. Yeah, there's still more to come, and that is that Ustada Salihah, that's my mistake. Is a typo there, by the way, so I apologize for that. It's supposed to say Ustada Salihah. She's going to be covering the life of Imam al-Bukhari. Ustad Abu Zuhair is going to come in for Imam al-Shafi'i, and then we have Sheikh Mishkat, who's going to take over and cover, inshallah, the life of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. So my apologies for going slightly over time. We're going to very shortly pass it over to Ustada Salihah. Just a few announcements to make before we move forward, and whilst inshallah Ustada Salihah is getting ready to come on, inshallah. And by the way, if you have any questions, I know some of you have already have already sent your questions in. Okay. So and some very good questions are coming in, but I don't want to prolong my part. At the end, stay, inshallah. I'm gonna make a note of all these questions, and if you just stay all the way till the end, we're all gonna answer your questions, inshallah. I'll come back on towards the end, and we're gonna answer your questions, inshallah. But really good questions coming in. In terms of Q-Iman, inshallah, do follow us on social media and at Q-Iman Arabic, and check out our website www.qiman.org. And something really exciting, which is that alhamdulillah, over the last 3 years now, I've been teaching at Q-Iman, and all of the instructors that you're going to see today, they are all key instructors for Q-Iman. Ustad Farhan, Sheikh Mishkat, Ustada Salihah. And we've been teaching as part of our main flagship program, as well as many other programs that we run, is the Arabic Awaken program. Okay, and the Arabic Awaken program is a 1-year program. We're talking about, mashallah, studying and these great Imams, right? But the Arabic Awaken program is the best start for you. Even if you have no experience or knowledge of the Arabic language, we start from the very beginning, inshallah. It's a 1-year intensive program, Sunday only. It's on site. So if you're in London, or if you live near London, then this is for you. Unfortunately, if you're tuning in from another part of the world, unless you're planning on making hijrah to London, like mashallah, many of these scholars made hijrah, then ahlan wa sahlan and welcome to you all. Otherwise, there are other programs for you, so hold up, inshallah. If you're from outside of London, there's other programs. But this program is our flagship program, Arabic Awaken. Our new intake of students is from this September. Inshallah, every September we have a new intake. This is going to be our 4th year, inshallah. And we study the Arabic language, Nahu, Sarf, Tajweed, spoken Arabic, Adab, so meaning Arabic literature and so on. All right, mashallah, by the end of the year, you're able to then move on to our diploma, our Islamic Sciences diploma, where you can begin to study the tafsir and hadith and so on and so forth. So if you want to apply, then head to Q-Iman.org, www.Q-Iman.org. All the details are on there. I would highly recommend this course for you all. And mashallah, we have some of our students that are online right now who have studied the Arabic language with us, and they've studied other courses with us. So do definitely check it out. As for other courses, right, if this is too intense for you, Sunday, full day, every single week, throughout the whole year, we have part-time courses as well, alhamdulillah. So on the website, there's part-time courses. We have new courses coming up, Arabic level 2, Arabic from the Quran, mantiq, logic. We have Sirah coming up, and a lot of these courses are online as well. So if you want to, inshallah, from the comfort of your own homes, you can, inshallah, study with us. And very kindly, the admin team have sent the link, so you can check that out, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. On one final note, I know I've gone way over, and I don't want admin to be on my back, but the last thing that I'm going to request, inshallah, is just a personal project that I'm working on. Is we're trying to build a masjid and a school, and we're trying to spread education, inshallah. And the total cost of this masjid and school is £40,000. If you want to donate, inshallah, you can go to, we're building this in Bangladesh, by the way, in an area they don't have any masjid, they don't have any school. So if you would like to find out more about this project, if you want to build your own fundraising page, or if you want to donate, then please do head over to launchgood.com/build hope, launchgood.com/build hope, inshallah. And I will end it here. وجزاكم khairan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from us. وآخر دعوانا and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. I will be back at the end to answer your questions. And in the meantime, we are going to hand it over to Ustada Saliha when she's ready, inshallah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Can everybody see me? Can I? Okay, I'm just going to begin my slides. Okay, I'm assuming everyone can hear me and see me, inshallah, and I'm just going to bring up my presentation slides, inshallah, to share. So please bear with me. Okay, here we are. Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Nabiina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Just want to remove Okay, Jazakallah khairan, Ustad Shabir, for your wonderful presentation. It's a hard act to follow, but alhamdulillah, that was very informative about Imam Abu Hanifa. Inshallah, I hope that I can do justice with the next Imam, Imam Malik, rahimullah. And I'd like to also thank you for this opportunity to allow me to take part in this series of the 4 great Imams. It's an honor and a privilege to be working as an instructor for Q-Iman, and also to be taking part in this series with all the great teachers here. Alhamdulillah. So let's begin, inshallah. So and my salam to everybody. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to our series of the 4 great Imams. So I'll be talking to you about Imam Malik, inshallah. And as Ustad Shabir has informed us about the 4 Imams, but I'd still like to take a look at the chronological order that they come in, inshallah. So I hope we'll move to the next screen. So the 4 famous madh-habs, they have, alhamdulillah, come about from the 4 famous Imams. So as we've just heard about Imam Abu Hanifa, who we get the Hanafi school of madhhab from, and I'll be talking to you about Imam Malik, who we get the Maliki school of madhhab from, and thereafter Imam Shafi will be talked about, who has formulated the Shafi school of thought, and then the Imam Ahmad, who we get the Hanbali school of thought from. So from this slide, what you can see is a chronological order, and you can see that Imam Abu Hanifa, one of the greatest Imams, he was born 13 years prior to Imam Malik, rahimahullah, who came 13, so Imam Malik was 13 years his junior. And it's important to see this chronological order because, inshallah, as you will see as the story unfolds, how the relations of the Imams were with each other. As Ustad Shabir mentioned earlier on in his talks, the relationship between the Imams is something we really need to learn from. The reverence and the respect with which they treated each other with. And subhanAllah, we find in our times, we have small differences. We don't lead any madhabs in our own names. We're not great Imams, yet we find that we're separated by minute differences. So these are lessons, inshallah, we could take from all these great Imams. And so I'll begin. So I'd like to share this hadith with you in Sunan al-Tirmidhi. As the Prophet ﷺ said, very soon will people beat the flanks of camels in search of knowledge, and they shall find no one more knowledgeable than the knowledgeable scholar of Medina. Now, you may be wondering why I'm sharing this hadith. So Imam Malik became known as the scholar of Medina, and it's for this reason Imam al-Tirmidhi, al-Qadi Iyad, al-Dhahabi, and others related from Sufyan ibn Uyayna, Abd al-Razaq ibn Mahdi, ibn Ma'in, Dhuayb ibn Imama, ibn al-Madini, and others that they considered this scholar to be Malik ibn Anas. So for this reason, I had to mention this hadith. It's often referred to as the prophecy of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that this Imam was Malik. So Malik ibn Anas, he was known as the Amirul Mu'mineen fil Hadith. So those of us who have studied Hadith in whether it's a basic Hadith or advanced Hadith courses, then you will know that he was recognized as the Amirul Mu'mineen fil Hadith. He was also known as the Imam of Dar al-Hijra. And of course, this is because he was based in the city of Medina, the blessed city of Medina. His full name was Malik ibn Anas ibn Malik ibn Abi Amir ibn Amr ibn al-Harith al-Asbahi. He was born 1993 after Hijri, Medina in Saudi Arabia, and he died 179 after Hijri, Medina, Saudi Arabia. So we can see from this that his entire life was spent in Medina. His parents were Aliya bint Shuraykh al-Azdiya, and so that's his mother, and his father was Anas ibn Malik. Now, Imam Malik's father was just a simple tradesman who used to make arrows for a livelihood. And, Allahu Alam, this may be because he had a disability, and so this prevented him from pursuing a sort of a course in hadith studies, as his father was renowned for hadith. But we'll see how Imam Malik found his path, inshallah. His brother was Nadr ibn Anas, and his brother, although he was older than him, I believe. So there's a story related about Nadr ibn Anas and Imam Malik, rahimahullah. So what happened was they were set a task by their father, and Imam Malik was unable to fulfill this task due to being busy with the birds. So he used to enjoy spending time with the birds. And his father made a comment upon this, which made him feel disheartened about, saying, he said to him that, you were too occupied with playing with the birds that your brother overtook you in this task. And at this time, Imam Malik was about 7 years old. And it was this particular incident which made him determined to, succeed and to strive for recognition. He didn't like the way he was made to feel. And of course, he wanted to win the favor of his father and be able to fulfill these tasks. So he became determined at the age of 7, to pursue education. So some important points. His family belonged to the Yemeni tribe of Al-Asbah, as we said earlier, and due to certain circumstances, his grandfather Malik migrated to Medina. So his grandfather Malik, or he was also known as Abu Anas, was the main source of knowledge for Imam Malik, like we said, because his father was a tradesman, and this may have been due to his disability. So, he made arrows and sold them. But his grandfather, Imam Malik's grandfather, met many companions of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, and he narrated many of their traditions as well, like, from Abu Huraira and Aisha radiallahu anha and many more Sahabas. He is counted among the foremost tabi'in in the generation that followed the companions, so the first generation of Muslims. He was, interestingly enough, one of the scribes of the Quran during the life of Uthman radiallahu anhu. So that was, an amazing fact that I learned also. Now, Imam Malik had committed the entire Holy Quran, as the scholars did at that time, to memory at a young age. And as Ustad Farhan mentioned earlier, the scholars, this was a natural step that most scholars took in terms of education. They would pursue their Quran studies, and soon after, their Alamiya studies, they will study fiqh or hadith or whichever path they chose into scholarship. But education was a lifelong endeavor for these scholars. And inshallah, that is something, we need to think over, because education is not separate for us, especially as Muslims. So Imam Malik rahimahullah was 13 years junior to Imam Abu Hanifah, as we mentioned earlier. But, subhanAllah, he lived a longer life than any of the famous Imams of fiqh, as we shall see. Imam Malik and Abu Hanifah had met to discuss their views on certain legal verdicts and to compare evidences. And, this is, again, a point for us to ponder on, that these great Imams who have, formulated madh-habs of their own, though they may have come, way after their times in terms of being more established as madh-habs. But what we really need to understand and respect is how they were scholars in their own rights. They had their own principles, usuli principles, which they based their views and opinions on. Nevertheless, this did not diminish the respect or the reverence they had for each other. So moving on, at the age of 13, Imam Shafi also went to see Imam Malik, who was impressed by his memory and intelligence, and thereafter, from this point onwards, he provided him with financial assistance in the study of fiqh. So we should hear about Imam Shafi from Ustad Farhan, inshallah. And he lived in the era of the Umayyad dynasty, and there's a few incidents that I'll be sharing with you, which will be coming up shortly, about what happened during these times, or the difficulties that not just Imam Malik rahimahullah, but most of the scholars faced during that time. So now, in terms of the fiqh of the Maliki madhab, it spread to much of North Africa, Al-Andalus, which is Spain, Egypt, and some of it spread to Asham, which is Palestine, Yemen, which is where Imam Malik his family originated from, and also Sudan and Iraq and Khorasan. So, you know, we find even today the Maliki madhab, we may have friends and family, you know, who are of that madhab. So it helps us to know and recognize, I think it's really beneficial, this course, in how we relate to the Imams that we follow. Alhamdulillah, I mean, we are fortunate that we have these great Imams to follow, and we're able to do taqleed of the methods and procedures they've laid out for us. Nevertheless, it's important to know where these scholars have come from and how the madhabs have been formulated for us, and you know, and the reasons we follow these madhabs, and to recognize that the difference of opinions amongst these scholars and the different madhabs are nothing short of a blessing for us as Muslims, and that we recognize this throughout the world, that everybody who is following these madhabs, you know, like we said, in the different countries around the world, through the different families and friends we know, through our colleagues, you know, we may come across somebody who is Shafi'i or Maliki, then we can, inshallah, learn to appreciate, you know, how all this was achieved via these great Imams. So now let's take a look at Imam Malik's education, inshallah. Imam Malik received his education in Medina, namely in the Prophet's mosque. And in the foundational years, his grounding in Islamic education took place in Medina. And naturally, we know that he had a large concentration of scholars who are either tabi'in or tabi'in. So we're talking about the first generation of Muslims after the Sahaba, and the second generation of Muslims thereafter. So you can imagine this time, you know, living in Medina, growing up in Medina, being surrounded by all these great scholars. And 40 notable senior jurists resided in Medina during this time also. So something else that we learn about Imam Malik rahimahullah is that he gave preference to the actions of the people of Medina. And we can see now that this may be due to the huge presence of scholars and companions throughout his time, naturally, because he was part of this generation. He understood the importance of the actions of the people of Medina, and this became a tool for him, if you like. It was one of his principles of usul when he derived rules and laws from Quran and Sunnah. So, you know, it helps us to understand the differences that come between our great Imams, inshallah. So we will find that other Imams have not used have not given any preference to the actions of the people of Medina. So Imam Malik's education continued. The Imams of the people were Umar, thereafter Zayd ibn Thabit, and then Abdullah ibn Umar. Their knowledge was collected by three, mainly Ibn Shihab, Bukair ibn Abdullah, Abu Zinad, and the knowledge of all three of these scholars can be found in Malik ibn Anas, and that's why it was important to mention this. Some of the great teachers of Imam Malik rahimahullah, we have Rabi'a ibn Abdul Rahman, his name was also Abu Uthman. Now Imam Malik began visiting the famous scholar. He was famously known as Rabi'atul Rai upon the encouragement of his mother to pursue education. So Imam Malik visited him due to the encouragement he received from his mother. We need to remember now, all these scholars, you know, great scholars who come about, naturally they have support from their families. support from their teachers, but we really need to give a special mention to mothers. And this is a message to all the sisters out there who, we can play a really vital role in the life of and the choices and goals that our children choose for themselves, because it's from this encouragement from his mother. His mother herself, pursued education and understood the value of education. So when it came to her own children, she encouraged them to pursue education. And so, just going back to one of his great teachers that he attended was Rabi'atul Rai, and he was well known for his diverse fiqh values. And hence, like we mentioned earlier, the preference which he gave to the actions of the people of Medina also came about from this influence. And Rabi'atul Rai, he got this title from the fact that he was always changing his opinions. And like we said, this is just showing diversity in his fiqh views. Excuse me. So moving on to his next great teacher, Abdurrahman ibn Hurmuz. So Imam Malik spent more than 7 years in the company of Abdurrahman ibn Hurmuz. And just to let you know a little bit about him, aside from fiqh, Ibn Hurmuz had knowledge of the fundamentals of Islam and the views of sects of the time and their history. And as was mentioned earlier in the talk of Imam Abu Hanifah, the views of the sects and their history it was equally as important because of the changing times during that period. Now, he used to spend from morning till night at the house of Ibn Hurmuz seeking knowledge. There were often reports that he would turn up there early in the morning and there would be noise outside Ibn Hurmuz's house, which his servants would report to him. And he would know that this was Imam Malik, so he would ask his servants to let him in. And so, and eventually he was seen leaving the house at night time. So if you look at this, this is not normal. How many of us will honestly turn up to our teacher's home first thing early in the morning and, impose ourselves upon them till late at night? This is something to think about. He was certainly determined. He was persistent. And we need to remember that this carried on for 7 years in the company of Abdurrahman ibn Hurmuz. So now moving on. One of the great lessons learned, I had to share this with you at this point, is that Ibn Hurmuz would often say to him, if you're not aware of the answer to a question, do not display unnecessary formality. You should clearly say that you do not know. Therein lies your respect. Okay? And Imam Malik always Rahimullah, lived by this advice. If he was ever asked a question that he did not know the answer to, he would simply say, La adri, I do not know. And this is a great lesson for all of us, I believe, today, simply because I don't think we say these words enough. And what we can also learn from the great scholars is that even being so knowledgeable and being leaders in the pursuit of knowledge, yet they had such immense sincere characters that they were not afraid to say I don't know. And I think today that's something we find in today's day and age, that it's a term we're not very comfortable with, and we're not very familiar with. And I think this is something we should embrace from our scholars, that when we don't know the answer to a question, we simply say I don't know. We don't have to embellish it with conjectures or what we think may be correct. We need to really take seriously that the impact this can have upon the person that we're giving this advice to. So this is certainly one of the great lessons learned from these scholars. Okay, so now there were many more teachers of Imam Malik rahimahullah. As we can see from this list, I'm just going to keep an eye on time. So we have Imam Jafar as-Sadiq, we have Muhammad ibn Yahya Ansari, Abu Hashim Salah, Yahya ibn Sa'id, Hisham ibn Urwa, and as I said, those of you who are studying the Islamic sciences or you know, the Hadith sciences, then you will be familiar with these names. And another famous teacher of Imam Malik rahimahullah was Nafi ad-Daylami, famously known as Nafi, the freed slave of Abdullah ibn Umar. So Imam Malik, when he attended his circles, would not like to ask questions in front of the senior students. So what he used to do was wait in the scorching sun, you know, for him to finish his sessions, and to benefit with him from him with just one hadith or to query an issue. And you know, and so he would walk along with the scholars and you know, ask what he had to ask. Now, just a couple of points to take from what he learned from Nafi, the slave of Abdullah ibn Umar, is that Nafi used to specialize in the hadith narrated by Ibn Umar, so most of us are aware of this. Number two, Imam al-Bukhari said that the soundest of all chains of transmissions was Malik from Nafi from Ibn Umar. And the scholars of Hadith all referred to this as the golden chain. Okay, so in the sciences of Hadith, we know this as the golden chain. 80 narrations with this chain, this is number 3, are in the famous Muwatta, which is one of the books of Imam Malik rahimahullah, which we will be taking a look at very shortly, inshallah. So another one of Imam Malik's great teachers is Muhammad ibn Shihab az-Zuhri, one of the most influential teachers of Imam Malik, we could say actually. Now Imam Malik would attend his circles and memorize hadith by tying a knot for each one memorized to keep count. And there's a story which is reported. So on this one occasion, Imam Malik rahimahullah went to his circle to memorize 40 hadith. So when he came away and he was, you know, revising these hadith and writing them down, he noticed, he wrote down 39 hadith, but noticed that he had 40 knots tied. So he went back to Ibn Shihab and said, I memorized 39 hadiths and I left one out by mistake. And at this, you know, Ibn Shihab reprimanded him and said, you know, all made a comment like all knowledge is lost. So subhanallah, you know, we have to really think about, you know, this situation. What has happened is, so Imam Malik rahimahullah is memorizing 40 hadiths. We're not talking about, you know, taking down word for word and noting it down in our books and then going home and revising over them and spending time memorizing them. He's memorized them, you know, subhanAllah, at that session. Perhaps he's read them earlier or maybe not. And he's gone away and he's writing them down from memory. And just for having forgotten one hadith, subhanAllah, you know, he's been reprimanded by his teacher. And the scholars, you know, they are terming this as all knowledge having been lost. So it just shows the importance they gave to retaining knowledge in memory. You know, you could say, we could liken it to how the Quran is memorized and protected in our memories. And that's, you know, a way that Allah has secured preservation of the Quran. And similarly, what we find is that the scholars give equal importance to preservation of a hadith of, you know, the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I think this is certainly something we can learn from. Now, Imam Malik's teacher, Ibn Zuhri, states that he used to attend the lessons, that Imam Malik stated that he used to attend the lessons and listen to the traditions and thereafter return home and write them down from memory. So actually, yeah, so that makes the point that he didn't know them beforehand, okay? Now, Umar ibn al-Abdulaziz said of Ibn Zuhri, so those of you who are wondering who Ibn Zuhri is, seek Ibn Shihab, for you will not find anyone more knowledgeable with regards to the Sunnah than him. So we're referring to the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that there was nobody more knowledgeable than him around. So like I said, you know, he was one of the most influential teachers of Imam Malik. Now, as I said earlier, that he was the author of Al-Muwatta, the approved, and this is Al-Mu'atta is a collection of sound narrations of the Prophet ﷺ from the people of Hijaz, together with, what it has in the book is, number one, the sayings of the Sahaba, so the companions who spent time in the company of the Prophet ﷺ. Number two, the sayings of the Tabi'in, so this is the first generation of Muslims after the Sahaba, and the sayings of the Tabi'in, so this is the second generation of Muslims who came after the Tabi'in. Now, Imam Malik is reported to have said that I showed my book to 70 jurists of Medina, and every single one of them approved it for me, so I named it the approved Al-Mu'atta. So Al-Mu'atta, it means the approved. And subhanAllah, this shows, the effort our scholars took and the steps of precaution they took, to transfer this knowledge. So they were very conscious and very wary of their responsibility and the seriousness of, passing on knowledge and its accuracy and being certain, that you're spreading good, inshallah. Now, Imam Malik composed Al-Muwatta over the course of 40 years. He began with 10,000 narrations, and obviously working through those years, reduced them to fewer than 2,000, which it stands at currently. So, a lot of work has gone into this book, and we'll see why. So Al-Mu'atta, with regards to this, Imam Shafi referred to it as the soundest book on earth, the most accurate book on earth, and the most beneficial book on earth after the Quran. Okay, and Imam al-Bukhari said that the soundest of all chains of transmission was Malik from Nafi from Ibn Umar, as we mentioned earlier, and also we said that the scholars of Hadith called this the golden chain. There are 80 narrations from this chain in the Muwatta, as we said earlier. And with regards to this also, Ibn Abdul Barr said that Imam Malik was the first to have compiled a book formed exclusively of sound narrations. Now, I know you're thinking about the other books of Hadith which followed, and we'll comment on those, inshallah. So Imam Malik rahimahullah, he was a teacher, a muhaddith, and jurist. So even Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, his teacher, held Imam Malik in great regard as a teacher and would sit in his study circles. And as we mentioned earlier, they would get together and discuss their opinions and the difference of opinions and their evidences. And, so this is, something we can learn from, and just imagine the kind of respect they had for each other, and how there was no ego tied in their work or in their goals, and this is certainly something we most certainly should take from our past scholars. Now, he was a great muhaddith, a scholar of hadith. He was very particular in examining and selecting hadith for recording in his Muwatta. And as we shall see, this is why it was one of the most, one of the first authentic books of its time. As a jurist, he was not afraid of giving fatwa, legal Islamic rulings, even if it was against the Khalif. And this is something we'll touch upon again. He was once flogged for doing so, so there's a story behind this. Now, Imam Malik rahimahullah, held the hadith of the Prophet in such reverence that he never ever narrated anything, nor even gave a fatwa unless he was in a state of a ritual impurity. In fact, once his nephew reported that he asked him for a fatwa, and his uncle made him sit down, and he said, sit and wait here, I'm coming. And he went away, and he made ablution, and then he came back and was ready to give him a fatwa. So again, this is another practice that we can really take from our scholars. And I think those of us who have been to madrasas or Islamic seminaries here in the UK or around the world will know that this is a practice we find amongst our respected teachers, and this is something we can embrace ourselves, inshallah, and encourage in our students. So now we're coming to the story. The story is about the Caliph Abu Ja'far al-Mansur at that time. Abu Ja'far al-Mansur had forbidden Imam Malik to narrate a hadith. The divorce of the coerced does not take effect. Laysa ala mustakrihin talaq. Yeah. So now let's see why he had forbidden Imam Malik to narrate this hadith. So this hadith reflected Imam Malik's fatwa against the one who forcibly declares himself ruler, and you've guessed right, namely Abu Ja'far al-Mansur. So obviously having become declared himself a ruler, and so the validity of this hadith, what it did was it proved Imam Malik's opposition to falsehood, and of course it got him into trouble as he was lashed for this as well. And it's reported that he was taken on the back of a donkey after having been lashed and humiliated. So and this is not something simple, like we said earlier, that we find all of the Imams at some point, went through some kind of punishment when they came into opposition with the rulers or rulership at that time, the Khilafas, unfortunately. And some of them either got themselves killed or either got themselves lashed, like Imam Malik. And what we also hear reports of is that Imam Malik came away holding his arm. So there were reports that his shoulders were dislocated from this lashing, and he came away holding one arm with the other, in a broken manner. And this is how he was treated, a great Imam of his time. Now, another interesting thing we also find out is that Imam Malik forgave Ja'far al-Mansur for this lashing, saying that, and when he was asked why he forgave him, he said, "I feared to meet the Prophet ﷺ after being the cause for the destruction of one of his relatives." So subhanAllah, again, this shows the kind of values, the thought process, and also the extent of their forgiveness, that even after being humiliated, being tortured, that all that is coming to the mind of these great scholars is what the Prophet ﷺ will be thinking of them. And this is how attached they were to the Akhirah. And this is another lesson we can take from them, that the disattachment we have to the Akhirah, this is, this could become detrimental when we travel from this world into the next. And I think this is definitely something we can work on as Muslims, as students of knowledge, seeking knowledge, inshallah, that we need to stay connected to the Akhirah and to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and the Quran, inshallah. Okay, so I would like to talk to you a little bit about Imam Malik's students, and I'm just going to quickly check that I'm not going over time. Yes, so I will quickly try and wind up now. I think otherwise I'll be going over time. So some 1,300 scholars sat in the circles of Imam Malik. They copied the Muwatta, the collection of a hadith from Imam Malik, and the famous pupils among them were Yahya ibn Yahya al-Masmudi, ibn Wahhab, Abu Muhammad Abdullah, Abu Abdullah Abdul Rahman. So some of you may be familiar with them. His most prominent students, we really need to mention, were Abdul Rahman ibn al-Qasim, Abdullah ibn Wahhab, Ashab ibn Abdul Aziz, and he was one of the elder students. So those of us, who come into studying later on in our lives, this is something to consider, and a motivation to take away. Abdullah ibn Abdul Hakim, who was also a friend of Imam Shafi, and Asad ibn al-Furat, Abdul Malik, and Abdul Walid. Now, another story that I could not hold myself from sharing with you, though I'm sure most of you are familiar with this particular story of the scorpion. Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak narrates that I was with Imam Malik while he was relating a hadith to us, and a scorpion stung him 16 times. Now, I don't know about stinging of scorpions. Some of us have never seen a scorpion in our life, and and we hope that it stays that way. Now, what happened when he was stung by a scorpion, and this is as he was relating a hadith. Now, his color changed and he grew pale. However, he didn't interrupt the hadith of the Messenger of Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so when the majlis came to an end and the people left him, Abdullah ibn Mubarak asked him, said to him, I have seen something amazing from you today. And to this, Imam Malik replied, yes, I was only patient out of respect for the hadith of the Messenger of Allah. Subhanahu wa ta'ala, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So again, this is something for us to think about. How do we react when we are in lesson or when we are delivering lessons, and a simple fly or spider may appear in front of us and we find we jump out of our seats, even whilst we're studying, whether it's Quran or Hadith. And really, I think this is another lesson we can take away, is that the immense respect that these great teachers had for education, that to the point that they suffered just to not interrupt the blessed gatherings of these circles when studying Quran and Hadith. And I think that's certainly something we should think about, and maybe next time not worry too much about that fly or that spider that appears in front of us. Now I'm very quickly coming close to the end now. So the characteristics and abilities, just a summary of them really quickly. So Imam Malik rahimahullah possessed a strong memory, as we realize that in those times the scholars they relied on their memories and not necessarily books. Alhamdulillah, they relied on books to pass the knowledge down to us, but that's because of the weakness in the ummah of not being able to retain them in memory. And as we find that from books, mistakes can be transferred also. So memorization is the best form of preservation. Now, Imam Malik was granted the ability of firasa, or foresight, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is something Ibn Ustad Farhan mentions in his accounts, in his meeting with Imam Shafi. Then we may learn some more about this. So he had firasa. Now, Imam Malik displayed ikhlas, so he had sincerity in all his actions, whether as a student or as a teacher. His actions were solely for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not for the any worldly gain. And a very important point that I forgot to mention in the beginning was that Imam Malik was from a very wealthy family. So, and this is the reason he was able to provide for his students, and he was able to provide, for example, for Imam Shafi, for his education of fiqh as well. So he didn't lack anything in his life, and Allahu Alam, perhaps it's for this that he wasn't sentenced to death, but rather just flogged, but he did nevertheless suffer. But Imam Malik, nevertheless, he took advantage of that wealth and spent it in pursuing knowledge, and spent it in supporting students of knowledge. So again, this is another example that we can learn from. Those of us who have been blessed with wealth, then we can use it to support, institutions such as Q-Iman, and students who wish to pursue studies in the Islamic sciences field. Now, moving on to the next point, Imam Malik possessed patience and perseverance, and we know throughout his journey that his persistence didn't come without patience and perseverance. And this is, some of us who've led a life as students will know that this is what it takes: patience and perseverance. And and we saw this in Imam Malik when he waited outside the doors of his teachers, in order to sometimes just learn one hadith from them. So now coming to one of my last reports, and then we should be ending inshallah, so that Ustad Farhan can go on. Apologies for going on. The Khalif Harun al-Rashid once said to Imam Malik, after hearing his answers to certain questions he presented before him, he said, "You are by Allah the wisest of the people and the most knowledgeable of people." Imam Malik then replied, "No, by Allah, O leader of the believers." So he said, "Yes, but you keep it hidden. By Allah, if I live, I shall put your sayings in writing like the madh-habs are put down in writing, and I shall disseminate them to the ends of the world." but Malik refused. Subhanallah. So this is something for us to think about, how restless as some of us, we get so excited to, author an article or a book and to have it out there, and to be offered this privilege. I don't know how many of us would refuse it. But again, this shows the fact that even after, his muwatta being approved by 70 jurists, he still didn't want it to be put out there in writing, and for it to be spread around the world. He wanted it to travel of its own merits and of its own truthfulness. So again, this is another lesson we can take from Imam Malik. So now coming to an end, Imam Malik passed away on the 11th of Rabiul Awal in the year 179 after Hijri at the age of 86. And remember, we said that he lived longer than all the other three famous scholars. Now, what I'm taking away from the study of Imam Malik is that, subhanAllah, throughout his lifetime, he never wore shoes in Medina al-Munawwara. This is how he revered the city of Medina. He never ever sat on a horse or used the toilets in this blessed city. Sorry, there's an error there. He used to leave the city to relieve himself. Again, this is, some of us would think of this as extra haraj, but if you think of it in terms of this great Imam, the love and respect that he had, not just for the Prophet ﷺ, but the city, to the extent that he would leave the city to relieve himself. And not only that, he used to kiss the old buildings and the remains of the old foundations, just for the mere fact that Rasulullah ﷺ may have walked by, he may have touched, or even set eyes upon these. So this really blew me away when I found out about the behavior of Imam Malik rahimahullah. But also, I think there are many reports which say that in his older age, he refrained from attending the mosques or Jama'ah. And when he was asked the reasons, Imam Malik said not all reasons can be shared. And, subhanAllah, I think we certainly know from his greatness and his achievements and his humbleness, we can certainly understand this, that there was definitely something holding him back. And, and we can only guess that if it's, if he was traveling outside of the city to relieve himself, then it could only be that in old age, he experienced some kind of problem which would not allow him to be in a pure state. And so he refrained from these actions in the, mosque of the Prophet ﷺ. And alhamdulillah, this brings me to the end of Imam Malik rahimahullah. So I'd like to say Jazakumullahu khairan for listening. And I pray that this has been beneficial. Inshallah, if there's anything that I have missed out, I hope that the other teachers, respectful teachers, will cover those points. And please do go away and look over. In half an hour, there's only so much we can cover about these great Imams. And I've only taken the facts that I feel that were most relevant or that we could take lessons for. So I'm going to stop my share there. And Jazakallah khairan, Ustaz Shabir, and I'm ready to hand over when you're ready.
Jazakallahu khairan to Ustada Saliha for taking us through, mashallah, very, very clearly the life of the great Imam Malik rahimahullah. And inshallah, we are going to be moving on. So just going to kindly ask Ustada Saliha to, if you want to turn your video off, and then we'll allow Ustad Farhan to turn his video on and then share his screen, inshallah. So we're going to be moving on now, inshallah. By the way, there's just a few announcements, as you would know, that the chat has been disabled for the time being. So we're going to turn the chat back on towards the end when we have the Q&A segment, inshallah. Only 2 more to go, so we're halfway through, mashallah. We're going to be moving on to the great Imam al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah. And this is going to be led by our dear Ustad and founder of Q-Iman, mashallah, Ustad Abu Zuhair. Others would know him as Ustad Farhan. and inshallah he's going to take us through Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah. So let's hand it over to Ustad Farhan. Barakallahu feekum.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. Can you guys hear me to start with? Just a hello, yes, I can hear you, would work. All right, brilliant, fantastic. And you can see my screen, right? It's been shared, yeah? Brilliant, okay. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulil Kareem wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So first of all, I'd like to thank Ustad Shabir and Ustad Salihah for a very informative couple of sessions. And you know, there's so much to talk about. Wallahi, if you read up on Imam Abu Hanifah, Imam Malik, may Allah be pleased with both of them. It's just the sheer amount of information that exists regarding each of them. No amount of seminar can do justice, and it will take many arguably years to have a really full understanding of how each Imam functioned, taking into account not just their history but their fiqh, their usul, their methodology, their manhaj, their general life, their wara', and so on and so forth. There's so much to take into account. So I'm going to try my best with this next Imam, and I'm not sure how far we're going to get. So let's see, inshallah. But I'd like to first begin, if I can just get started. There we go. I'd like to begin with a story. Yeah, a very short yet very informative story. There was a young boy long ago, once upon a time. Yeah, that's how stories begin, isn't it? Once upon a time, there was a young boy, and this boy had a great zeal for learning. And his mother had raised him as an orphan, and she wanted to educate him. And so she sent him in the path of the deen. And he spent much of his youth learning about the deen. He memorized the Quran, he learned the Arabic language, he perfected his understanding of the Arabic language, he learned Arabic poetry, he learned hadith. And he did all of this, right around the age of 10 going on to 13, according to some of the reports. You guys probably want to take a guess who that is. It's Imam al-Shafi'i. If you didn't know, that's Imam al-Shafi'i. It is said that round about the age of 13, Imam al-Shafi'i, he went to travel to Medina. He was told of Imam Malik before the age of 13, and by the age of 10, according to some reports, he had already memorized the Muwatta of Imam Malik. So Sister Salihah mentioned the Muwatta, which was, Imam Malik's hadith compilation. Arguably the most Sahih book that has ever existed was the Muwatta of Imam Malik. And all of its Sahih hadith have been encapsulated in Sahih al-Bukhari. Okay, so one of the reasons why Muwatta is not included in the 6 compilations is because all the Sahih hadith of Muwatta are in Bukhari. Other than that, arguably some people say it is the most authentic hadith compilation. Imam al-Shafi'i, by the age of 10, according to one report, had memorized the whole of Muwatta. Now there are over 1,000 hadith in Muwatta of Imam Malik. By the age of 10, this young boy who was eager to learn knowledge had memorized it. And he prepared himself, and around about the age of 13 or so, he began his journey to Medina. But he knew that he might not, or rather he thought he might not get an audience with Imam Malik. So he spoke to somebody who got him a reference from the governor at the time, recommending Imam al-Shafi'i to study with Imam Malik. So this young boy, he arrives at the doorstep of Imam Malik, and he knocks on the door, and Imam Malik's servant, she opens the door, and she says, what do you want? And he introduces himself, and his servant says, look, if you have a question, then go to his dars. You know his dars, it's in the masjid, Masjid al-Nabawi, go to his dars, right? He has no time at this moment for you or anybody else. And then he insists and he says, look, I have this letter of recommendation from the governor who says that I should have an audience with Imam Malik. So now Imam Malik is summoned. And Imam al-Shafi'i, he describes Imam Malik to be this tall, handsome fella with a turban, with absolutely clean clothes with no creases. A stunning appearance. Really, there's an aura about Imam Malik. And when Imam Malik sees this young boy, this eager boy to study, he asks him for this reference. So he takes the reference and he throws it to one side and he gets very upset. He gets very upset. Because for him, knowledge is not for sale, right? You've got to work hard. But Imam al-Shafi'i, upon discussing with Imam Malik and showing his eagerness, won Imam Malik's heart. This is a long story. I'm trying to cut it short because of time. He won Imam Malik's heart to such a point that Imam Malik said, fine, since you have learned so much and you've memorized my muwatta, I'll see you in the masjid tomorrow. And the next day, Imam al-Shafi'i, he goes to the masjid. And in the masjid, Imam Malik asks him to come and sit as close as he can to Imam Malik. And he comes right to the front. And Imam Malik has the muwatta in his hand, while Imam al-Shafi'i is he's repeating all of these ahadith directly from memory. And Imam Malik is so impressed by Imam al-Shafi'i. He says, you have a very bright future. So fear Allah and work hard. To that effect. And I wanted to start with this story. There's a lot more to the story, but I just wanted to start with a small story to show you, A, the connection between Imam Malik, since you just finished listening to Imam, or about Imam Malik, and B, who this individual is, and what his position was in the sight of great scholars, like Imam Dar al-Hijrah, which was a title of Imam Malik, the Imam of Dar al-Hijrah. And just before I finish the story, I just want to mention one last thing. Sister Salihah touched on this concept of firasa, right? Firasa is a lost science. It's the science of being able to tell or read into someone's personality by taking one look at somebody. And Imam Malik had firasa. So when he saw Imam al-Shafi'i, he knew at that moment that this is not any old student. It's not just a normal student. He's not just a young boy, but he's a young lad brimming with hope and knowledge and potential. And so Imam Malik takes him under his wing. Keep this in mind. Let's move on. Let's talk about the lineage of Imam al-Shafi'i. Imam al-Shafi'i, his name is Muhammad ibn Idris. His name is Muhammad ibn Idris ibn Uthman ibn Shafi' ibn As-Sa'ib ibn Ubaid ibn Abd Yazid ibn Hashim ibn al-Muttalib ibn Abd Manaf. Now the key thing that I want you to keep a mind on, or your eye on, is Ibn al-Muttalib. Now Ibn al-Muttalib is the uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his great-great-great-grandfather. Okay, keep that in mind. I'm going to show you a diagram which makes it clear. So Imam al-Shafi'i, i.e. Muhammad ibn Idris, who was born in the year 150 and died in the year 204, is from the same family as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now so as I said, he dies 150, or rather he's born 150 and he dies 204. Quick question: which scholar that you heard of died 150? Just think about that. And if you were listening carefully to the earlier lecture, you would have heard Ustad Shabir mention that Imam Abu Hanifah died 150, whereas Imam Shafi'i was born 150. And Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Malik, these are contemporaries, right? Imam Malik dies a couple of decades after Imam Abu Hanifa. And Imam Shafi'i is born the year that Abu Hanifa dies. So you can see the level of seniority there, first of all. But we're going to show you some connections in a little while, okay? There is one report in which it is suggested that Imam Shafi'i, actually, the fact that he was born on the same day that Abu Hanifa died, although it seems that that may have been a weaker narration. Now, if you take a look at this particular diagram, what I've done is I've quickly whipped up for you the lineage of Abd Manaf. Now, Abd Manaf, he's the key individual here when you're studying the lineage of the Prophet ﷺ. He had many children, of which I have just mentioned three: Abd Shams, Hashim, and Al-Muttalib. Okay? Now, Hashim had a son named Shayba. Hashim had a son named Shayba, who we know as Abdul Muttalib. Okay? Now, there's a very nice story, which I'm not going to tell you, but there's a very nice story in Sirah why Shayba was known as Abdul Muttalib. Suffice it to say that Hashim died leaving Shayba with his mother in Medina. Al-Muttalib, he found his nephew in Medina and brought him back to Mecca. And when he was coming back to Mecca, people saw that Al-Muttalib had entered Mecca with a young boy, and they thought that young boy was his slave. So they called him Abdul Muttalib, slave of Al-Muttalib, and the name stuck. Okay? And for that reason, most people, even in Sirah books, sometimes they don't even mention Shayba, they'll mention Abdul Muttalib. Okay? Who was the father of Abdullah, who was the father of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, Imam al-Shafi'i's lineage, Imam al-Shafi'i's lineage goes from this side here, right? From Ubaid, who's the son of Abd Yazid, who's the son of Hashim, not this Hashim, right? Another Hashim, who's the son of Al-Muttalib. And it was Abd Yazid, according to some narrations, who became a Sahabi. Who became a Sahabi, who met the Prophet ﷺ and became a Sahabi. So this is Imam al-Shafi'i's lineage. And you know, you can see that he comes from the same household. Now, I'll explain something very quickly. Some people might say, well, Imam al-Shafi'i is not Ahlul Bayt because he's not from Hashim, he's from Al-Muttalib. Here's the thing. The lineage of Hashim and the lineage of Al-Muttalib, the Prophet ﷺ treated them as one. Treated them as one. And we know this from Zakah, for example. In the chapters of the fiqh of Zakah, you're not allowed to give any Zakah to the family of the Prophet ﷺ, to Ahlul Bayt. Yeah? The Prophet ﷺ included in that category the children of Al-Muttalib, but he excluded the children of Abd Shams, who are at constant odds with Hashim, the Banu Hashim and Banu al-Muttalib, the children of Hashim and the children of Al-Muttalib. And when the children of Hashim, the tribe of Hashim, they gave protection to the Prophet when there was a boycott in Mecca, part of them were the children of Al-Muttalib, who also gave that protection. Furthermore, third evidence is we have this thing called Khumus, right? Where from the war booty, a fifth is given to the Prophet ﷺ's family. Al-Muttalib, Banu al-Muttalib, the children of Al-Muttalib are included in that. So there's three evidence to suggest that the Prophet ﷺ included the children of Al-Muttalib in the tribe of Hashim, and the Hashimites. And for that reason, we consider Imam al-Shafi'i to be from Ahlul Bayt. Let's look at Imam al-Shafi'i's childhood. Imam al-Shafi'i was born in Gaza in the year 150 Hijri. As we said, this was the year that Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, he passed away. He was very young when his father passed away, and his mother raised him as an orphan. And when he was just 2 years old, his mother took him to Mecca to raise him. The reason why they say in books like Siyaru A'lam al-Nubala, Dr. al-Dhahabi mentions many narrations regarding why his mother took Imam al-Shafi'i to Mecca. One of the reasons was because he was Sharif. Sharif is a title given to somebody from the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when Imam Shafi'i's father passed away, she feared that he might lose connection with his lineage. And she wanted him to be educated. So she brought him to Mecca, where he had his extended paternal family there. So he would keep ties with the Sharif lineage, and at the same time, he would gain some knowledge. And at a very young age, he mastered archery and horse riding. These are some activities that Imam Shafi'i engaged in. There are many stories about how quick he was with the arrow and how witty he was with the horse. Moving on to Imam Shafi'i's quest or journey in seeking knowledge. Like I said, Imam Shafi'i memorized Quran at a very young age. According to one narration, Imam Shafi'i, he memorized the Quran at the age of 7. And arguably by the age of 10, he had exhausted all knowledge in Mecca. In fact, some scholars would come to Imam Shafi'i and ask him questions to that extent. Yeah. He memorized the Muwatta of Imam Malik. He heard of Imam Malik. He wanted to seek knowledge from Imam Malik, but he didn't want to go to Imam Malik without knowing a little bit about him. And you know, in this story, there's a lot of nasiha. That when it comes to seeking knowledge, there are some prerequisites that you should endeavor to meet those prerequisites, work hard, and make sure that you are worthy to gain that knowledge. And Imam Shafi'i arguably spent 2 or 3 years memorizing the Muwatta before he went to meet Imam Malik. So he either memorized it by the age of 10 or by the age of 13, according to some reports. There's some conflict in some reports. There are other reports that suggest other dates. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned here is that Imam Malik, at a very young age, had also mastered the Arabic language and poetry. It is said that later on in his life, he stumbled upon Banu Huzayl. And Banu Huzayl were known for profound Arabic and amazing poetry. They were the best of the best, the cream of the crop, the creme de la creme. And Imam Shafi'i spent many years with this tribe perfecting his Arabic language and learning Arabic poetry. Whilst he never claimed to be a poet, he did say that if I wanted, I'd be better than the poet of the Prophet, Labib. And some of the scholars, they've said that it is true, that if Imam Shafi'i had excelled in poetry, he would have been better than the classical poets themselves. That's how much knowledge he had. Even today, you can buy Diwan al-Shafi'i, in which you've got all of his poems. I'm not sure about the English. I know there's an Arabic one. I'm pretty sure someone somewhere has done a translation of that you can find. He stayed with Imam Malik till Imam Malik died, till about 179 Hijri, 179 Hijri. And by that point, Imam Shafi'i was 29 years old. Having said this, Imam Malik was not the only teacher that Imam Shafi'i had. He still would travel time to time from Medina to other places. He would study with other teachers. He would come and visit his mother. He was very dutiful towards his mother, for his mother supported him in every circumstance. His mother supported him in gaining knowledge. And there's one thing I'll mention very quickly. If you study the lives of Abu Hanifah, Imam Malik, especially Abu Hanifah, Shafi'i, and Imam Ahmad, to a lesser degree Imam Malik, these three, Abu Hanifah, Shafi'i, and Ahmad ibn Hanbal, what you will realize in all three of their lives, their mothers played a crucial and instrumental role in them seeking knowledge. And there is some truth in that statement. Behind every successful man is a woman, is a very powerful woman. Even Imam Bukhari, according to some narrations, Imam Bukhari was born blind. And his mother, she made dua day and night, she made dua for Imam Bukhari. And he gained his sight and he went on to become a great scholar. Imam Shafi'i, his mother supported him. Imam Ahmad Hanbal, his mother, she begged him not to go to work. She begged him not to go to work. And she begged him to study. Whilst he was out of his chivalrous nature and his generous nature, he wanted to work and support his family. And we'll let Ustad Mishkat I don't want to sort of creep onto Ustad Mishkat's topic here. Inshallah, he'll clarify that. But her mother fought for him. Imam Abu Hanifa, his father left a fortune for him. And his mother spent that fortune on him so he would be educated. So behind every successful man, this is very true, is a woman, is a very powerful woman, a mother or a wife. to say the least. So his mother really helped him to sort of, and she was the one who actually encouraged him to go to Medina. She heard of Imam Malik and she said, I want my son to go and study with Imam Malik in Medina. Can you believe that? So within those years, he would still come and he would visit his mother. He was very dutiful to his mother. And round about when he was around about 29 years old, Imam Malik passed away. And Imam Shafi'i would still continue to study the fiqh of Imam Malik through his students. And it is said that Imam Shafi'i, his mind towards fiqh was opened up. That turning point in his life was when he met Imam Malik. In the year 184, now there's a lot of discussions, I'm skipping a lot, conscious of time. In the year 184 Hijri, so Imam Shafi'i is about 35 years old. Imam Shafi'i arrives in Baghdad. Now there's a whole story between this, where Imam Shafi'i actually initially goes to Yemen and he's appointed as a judge. However, there's some kind of misunderstanding with the governor. And the governor doesn't like Imam Shafi'i because Imam Shafi'i is not corrupt. He doesn't take any bribes, right? Whereas all the other judges and even the governors take bribes. So he's not happy with Imam Shafi'i for not taking bribes. So he complains to Harun al-Rashid that Imam Shafi'i is supporting the Alawite movement, not the Alawites of today. These are Alawites who supported the lineage of the Prophet ﷺ, and they were at odds with the Abbasid Empire. So he complained to Harun al-Rashid that Imam Shafi'i is supporting the Alawites to take over, to rebel against the Khilafah. And he was arrested and sent to Harun al-Rashid. And just at the point where he's about to get executed, he convinces Harun al-Rashid to let him go by reminding him that they're both from the same lineage, ultimately. And then, and at the same time, at that moment, that Imam Muhammad al-Shaybani, who we've mentioned here at the bottom of this line, he is Imam Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani, who is the student, by the way, the student of Abu Hanifa. You would have heard Ustad Shabir mention that Imam Abu Hanifa, in his council, arguably, according to one narration, had 36 scholars that would study under him. And from them, the three most well-known and prominent scholars were Imam Zufar, who was the eldest, then Abu Yusuf, who was probably the most intelligent student of Abu Hanifa, and Imam Muhammad al-Shaybani, who is the one who compiled all the fiqh of Abu Hanifa in 6 books. The main one was Kitab al-Asl. Now, my version of Kitab al-Asl, or al-Mabsut, is, so this one here is 12 volumes of Abu Hanifa's fiqh, Imam Muhammad al-Shaybani, and this is one book out of the 6 that Imam Muhammad al-Shaybani compiled. Okay, so Imam Muhammad al-Shaybani was a profound student of Abu Hanifa, and he became Qadi at the time of Baghdad. He was a judge, the main judge of Baghdad. And what's really important for you to know is that Imam Muhammad al-Shaybani also studied under Imam Malik. And when he studied under Imam Malik, he also compiled Imam Malik's Muwatta and is one of the narrators of Imam Malik's Muwatta. You can actually go to a shop and buy today Imam Muhammad's Muwatta, which is his transmission of Imam Malik's Muwatta. And what's interesting about Imam Muhammad's Muwatta is he not only transmits Imam Malik's Muwatta, he also adds to it the opinions of Abu Hanifa. So it becomes a very valuable book, and you can buy it in, I think the one I have is 2 volumes, and there's even an English version of Imam Muhammad's Muwatta, by the way. So Imam Muhammad was a prominent scholar of Abu Hanifa, and he studied with Imam Malik. And according to some narrations, it's in Medina, when Imam Muhammad studied with Imam Malik, that he met Imam al-Shafi'i, that they were colleagues. So when Imam Muhammad al-Shaybani hears that Imam al-Shafi'i is under trial with Harun Rashid, Imam Muhammad al-Shaybani goes and intercedes for Imam al-Shafi'i. And Harun al-Rashid says, fine, I'll let him go, but he's under your care. You take care of him. Okay? Right. What I've got here, By the way, somebody had their hand up. If you have a question, I don't mind. You can pop yourself off the mic and ask a question. Let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to continue. Now, I've got a little diagram here. Not all at once, by the way, please. I have a little diagram here which actually shows the connections. So you have Abu Hanifa, his three students, as I mentioned, Abu Yusuf, Imam Zufar, Imam Muhammad al-Shaybani. You have Imam Malik, whose student, so you have Imam Malik here, and then you have Imam al-Shafi'i, who studied under both Imam Malik and Imam Muhammad al-Shaybani. The key thing that I want you to know here, key point I want you to know, is that Abu Hanifa's fiqh can be traced back to Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, who was one of the first Sahaba and arguably the greatest faqih, jurist from amongst the Sahaba. Abu Hanifa's teacher is Hammad, who studied under Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, who studied under Alqamah, who studied under Ibn Mas'ud, radiyallahu anhu. There's a direct link between Abu Hanifa and Ibn Mas'ud. Similarly, Imam Malik studied under Nafi', and Nafi' was the freed slave of Abdullah ibn Umar. Okay, so there, it's not like the fuqaha sat there and conjured up their fiqh, but they are taking their fiqh directly from the Sahaba through a authentic chain of narration. Okay, and then you'll notice that Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he takes from Imam al-Shafi'i. He is Imam al-Shafi'i's student. Why is this diagram important? Because Imam al-Shafi'i, when it comes to fiqh, achieved something that neither of his predecessors were able to achieve. Okay, let's look at the canonization of fiqh and usul from the perspective of Imam al-Shafi'i. Now, Imam al-Shafi'i, as we said, spent much of his youth studying many different ulum and also studying under Imam Malik. He also studied under Imam Muhammad al-Shaybani for a couple of years. And then he actually took the books of the scholars of Iraq and he would go and he would study them when he would return to Mecca. And the one thing that Imam al-Shafi'i managed to do that neither Imam Malik, arguably, Imam Malik nor Imam Abu Hanifa managed to do, was to create a synthesis, a synthesis between the fiqh of Medina or the fiqh of Hijaz, which is the Arabian Peninsula, and the fiqh of Iraq. Why is this point important? Because if you look in history, there are methodological differences, hermeneutical differences between the fiqh of Iraq and the fiqh of Hijaz. The fuqaha, the jurists of Iraq were known as Ahlul Ra'i. Ahlul Ra'i. People who were very intelligent and were able to extrapolate rules from the Quran and Sunnah using intellectual mechanisms. Okay, I'll say that again. Ahlul Ra'i were very intellectual scholars who were able to extrapolate fiqh and rulings from the Quran and Sunnah using intellectual mechanisms. Imam Malik is arguably from Ahlul Hadith. The scholars of Hijaz were Ahlul Hadith. Ahlul Hadith, their methodology was to stay closer to the literal meaning of the text. Later on, all four madh-habs would center around this synthesis. But the father, arguably, of the synthesis was Imam al-Shafi'i. He managed to take the methodology of Ahlul Hadith and the methodology of Ahlul Ra'i and combine them and produce what we would say is the optimum methodology for deducing fiqh. This is one of the greatest things that Imam al-Shafi'i achieved, and arguably for this reason, Imam al-Shafi'i was known as the first mujaddid, the first reviver of the deen. The Prophet ﷺ said that at the turn of every century, there will be a mujaddid. There will be a reviver who will revive my deen. Many great scholars have said the first mujaddid of the first century was Imam al-Shafi'i for his efforts that he exhausted in bringing the synergy and synthesis between the fiqh of Iraq and the fiqh of Medina. Not only did he manage to create this synthesis, he was also arguably the first person to develop Islamic legal theory. And he wrote that down. Not that Imam Malik and Imam Shafi didn't operate on usul al-fiqh, Islamic legal theory, they did. But Imam Shafi is the one who canonized it, who did tadween of it, who compiled it in his book called Ar-Risala. So I have a copy of Ar-Risala here. This is my copy. You'll see that it's not very large. It's very thin, right? It's a very early text. And this was the first text on usul al-fiqh. There's a very good translation, if you would like to purchase, I would mention, the epistle on legal theory, gifted to me by one of my students. I make dua for him, you make dua for him. May Allah bless him. I mean, I wouldn't advise you to buy this if you're not a student of fiqh and Arabic. What I will say, that the introduction is very informative in this particular one. And it tells you a lot about Imam al-Shafi'i's methodology on usul. Now, let's look at some of his major contributions. So in the year 195, Imam al-Shafi'i, he went back to Baghdad. And it is in Baghdad where he actually compiles, for the first time, his Ar-Risala. But the mind that is a Shafi'i is an individual who understands that you can't just say something and stay with it, but it's all about constant revision and perfection. So later, when he would travel to Egypt, he would revise Ar-Risala and produce a second edition, which is what we have today. Now, it is when he went to Egypt in the year 199, bear in mind, Imam Shafi dies in the year 204. He's only got 5 years left now. It is in the year 199 that that he travels to Egypt. And it's in Egypt that Imam Shafi'i produces what we call his magnum opus, the Kitab al-Umm. So I have here my version of Kitab al-Umm. This particular version is 7 volumes. This particular version is 7 volumes. The text is extremely small. Otherwise, the older versions are much longer. He wrote in that zamana, imagine when they used to write with qalam and on paper of that time, he wrote 2,000 pages worth of fiqh. 2,000 pages worth of fiqh. And he included therein the Maliki and the Hanafi opinions. And he died thereafter in the year 204. Now, I've kind of like just glossed over because I'm very short of time. There's so much to speak about Imam al-Shafi'i. When it comes to his fiqh, when it comes to his usul, I mentioned his fiqh and his usul a little bit more because that's what he's most known for. But there are a great many discussions regarding Imam al-Shafi'i. He experienced a lot of trials, a lot of difficulties as well. Hatta, suffice it to say, even some of Imam Malik's overzealous students would come and beat Imam Shafi'i towards the end of his life. Whilst he didn't die from those beatings, he was extremely weakened. He had other problems because of which he passed away, but he was extremely weakened by that. And he fought vehemently against what we call asabiyya, against tribalism, this idea that because I studied under so-and-so sheikh, khalas, he's the best and he's this, he's that. He fought vehemently against that. And he said we have to stay closer to the Quran and Sunnah in this regard. But what he is, as I said, most well known for is his synthesis of fiqh. And if you're a serious student of knowledge, this is something you will, go and study, inshallah, bi'ithnillah. And I make dua that you all have the opportunity to study the deen and study Imam al-Shafi'i. Truly, he has left a great legacy for us. And understand one thing, we do not follow al-Shafi'i, al-Malik, Abu Hanifah, Ahmad. We follow Quran and Sunnah. These 4 have merely explained to us the Quran and Sunnah, reconciled between that which we cannot reconcile, so that we can easily move forward. Remember, a fiqhi mas'ala, a matter of fiqh in a fiqh book, is a final conclusion on everything that exists on Sharia. Taking into account all the hadith, all the Quranic verses, it's all boiled down into one conclusion. You read a conclusion that has taken decades, years, centuries to develop. And remember, the fiqh of any one madh-hab is not unique to the muassis, the founder. Like I said, Abu Hanifah had 36 students under him. One scholar said, if Abu Hanifa made a mistake, there were 36 people to correct him. Of them were Imam Muhammad al-Shaybani, teacher of Imam al-Shafi'i. Of them was Waqi', teacher of Imam al-Shafi'i. Of them was Sufyan al-Thawri, teacher of Imam al-Shafi'i. Some of the great scholars from there. Similarly, Imam Malik students, similarly, Imam al-Shafi'i students. It would be these students that would go and develop the fiqh. Now, in the Shafi'i fiqh, I've mentioned Kitab al-Umm, but one of the greatest books that we would usually study in general is Minhaj al-Talibin by Imam Nawawi. Imam Nawawi was a great Shafi'i scholar who would compile his Majmu', which is a voluminous book on Shafi'i fiqh. Although he died, he couldn't finish it. But the one that we tend to usually read is Minhaj al-Talibin. Again, there are great scholars like Ibn Hajar. Ibn Hajar, his commentary of Bukhari is known as the best commentary of Bukhari. Fath al-Bari. The scholar said, لا هجرة بعد الفتح. The hadith, man fahima fahima yani. The hadith, there is no migration after Fath, after the conquest of Mecca. Here it's a play on words. They say his book is called Fath al-Bari. Once you've read Fath al-Bari, you need no other commentary of Bukhari. This was written by Ibn al-Hajar al-Asqalani, who is a Shafi'i scholar, who left a legacy for us. You have Ibn Hajar, who's written many books on hadith, like Nukhbatul Fikr, right? You have great Shafi'i scholars in hadith like Ibn Salah. And all of these together, everything that we have, all of that is the madhab. Not one person, but constant development on the fiqh for each one of them. Okay? And then I'm just going to mention one last point till I get to my last story. The last point I'll say is, if anybody is interested in studying the Shafi'i fiqh, then I would say, of course, you should get the Epistle on Legal Theory. It's a very good book. Otherwise, study the Risala if you know Arabic. Otherwise, there's two books I will mention. One I'll show you the cover, one in Arabic and one in English, inshallah. So the one in Arabic, this is, my teacher, Sheikh Muhammad Spini, who's a Shafi'i, my usul teacher, Sheikh Muhammad Spini, who studied for many years in Syria, and he's taught us usul al-fiqh al-muqaran, sirah, tarikh, and a great hadith, great many subjects. So he advised us to study in depth this kitab, Kifayatul Akhyar, which is a good text in the Hanafi, in the Shafi'i fiqh. And in English, if you want to study the Shafi'i fiqh, then this is quite famous. Reliance of the Traveller, Umdatul Salik by Nuh Hamim Kella. Translation is really good in this. It's Arabic and English side by side, and it's written like a book of legislation, which is quite interesting. And some of its preliminary chapters and its subsidiary chapters are really, really good. Having said that, I'm going to now finish off with just one very quick story. My apologies, I'm already over time. I'm going to quickly finish with one small story. And this story is a meeting between Imam Shafi'i and one of his students. One of Imam Shafi'i's most prominent students. One day, Imam Shafi'i decided to go and visit the student of his. And there are different reports. Some say his daughter, some say his wife. I'll go with his daughter. Yeah? His daughter was asked to cook food. So she cooked a nice banquet, whatever they could afford, for Imam Shafi'i. So Imam Shafi'i went there, he ate his food. He spent the night there, and he would wake up and pray Fajr in the house. In the morning, this student, his daughter comes up to him and says, Dad, I'll say Dad, right? Papa, right? Or Ya Abati, yeah? Probably in Arabic. She probably said, Ya Abati, oh my father. This Shafi'i you keep talking about, you praise him so much, but I have some complaints. And this father didn't turn around and say, Astaghfirullah, how dare you talk about my teacher like this? He sat her down and he said, okay, tell me. She said, I have three things. Number one, when he came, she said, Ya Abati, oh my father, tell me, Is it not true? Isn't it true that a scholar, he has zuhud, he's ascetic in nature, he doesn't eat a lot? He said, of course. She said, but I saw a Shafi'i, Imam al-Shafi'i, he was stuffing himself. We presented food, he was eating so much. He didn't say anything. He didn't justify, he just stayed quiet. She said, as for point number 2, I left a pot of water for Imam al-Shafi'i to do wudu. In the morning, I woke up, he didn't read tahajjud, I did not hear him read tahajjud, nor did he do wudu, and he prayed fajr. What kind of scholar, what kind of teacher do you have? So Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, he did not tell his daughter off. Look at the hilm, the sabr, and the wisdom, the hikmah that Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, that the student had. I've already given it away, that the student had. So this student, he goes to his teacher, Imam al-Shafi'i, and he says, Sheikh, look, there are these 3 complaints. And then Imam al-Shafi'i responds to each one of them. He says, as for point number 1, me eating too much, he said, your daughter, absolutely correct. It is true. It is true that a scholar should be ascetic, a zahid, he shouldn't eat too much. But when I came to your house, I saw nothing but barakah. I literally saw barakah dripping from your food. And this is because of his students' wara' and piety. He never engaged in anything haram. He completely stayed away from everything that was haram. So Imam al-Shafi'i says, I wanted to partake in your barakah. So I took a bit of everything. With regards to me not praying tahajjud, it is true. I did not pray tahajjud. That is because I did not go to sleep all night. I spent the whole night working on one hadith. Ya Aba Umair, ma fa'ala al-Nughayr. The famous hadith when the Prophet ﷺ went to a young boy's house to console him about his dead bird. His dead pet, he had a pet bird who died. And the Prophet made a statement, Ya Aba Umair, ma fa'ala al-Nughayr. Oh Abu Umair, what happened to your tiny bird? And Imam al-Shafi'i, according to one narration, he extracted 70 matters of fiqh from that one hadith. And he said it was, I preferred to seek knowledge at that moment than to pray tahajjud. As for your third inquiry, I did not do wudu with the water that your daughter left because I never broke my wudu from Isha. Because I never slept. So with the same wudu, I prayed fajr. You want to take a guess if you didn't hear when I slipped with the slip of my tongue who that student was? That student was Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, the student of Imam al-Shafi'i, the most prominent, arguably, the most prominent student of Imam al-Shafi'i. And with that, I will leave you in the good hands of our most senior teacher, Sheikh Mishkat, who I have a great deal of respect and love for. And I'm very eager to visit him once our quarantine is over. May Allah bless him. Khalas, I'm done. Please make dua for me. Any mistakes that I've made are from me. Anything khair is of course from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallahu khairan to Ustad Farhan for taking us through the life of another great Imam, Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah. And this of course was the third Imam that we have now covered out of the 4, which now inshallah is going to bring us to the final Imam, inshallah. Last but by no least, of course, is the great Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, who Ustad Farhan just alluded to, the story between Imam Shafi'i and Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. And as mentioned, this is going to be covered by our senior Sheikh from Q-Iman, who mashallah is a lecturer of hadith and a lecturer of aqidah and of the Arabic language at Q-Iman, alhamdulillah, who will be taking us through Imam Ahmad's life. This is Sheikh Abu al-Barakat, or Sheikh Mishkat, as many of you know him as, who I will ask inshallah as soon as he's ready. You can get your video on and you can share this screen with everyone inshallah, to take them through the life of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. And also, just as a quick reminder, I know this has been advertised from between 2 to 5 p.m. So inshallah, we're still doing good with time. We're still doing very good with time. So don't go anywhere because we still have one Imam left. And Jazakumullah khair to you all for your patience as well. I know it's Ramadan and we're fasting, but you know what? Hearing these stories of these great Imams should just motivate and inspire us. And you know, this is how easy could it get? Alhamdulillah, we're sitting at home, tuned in to this live stream on Zoom and hearing about these great Imams. So inshallah, there is barakah in this. And of course, seeking knowledge is a great act of worship as well. So no doubt Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward us for our intentions in this blessed month of Ramadan. So as mentioned, we're going to have a Q&A session towards the end. So I know many of you still want to ask questions. Many of you are hungry to find out more about these great Imams. And already some questions are through. So we will prioritize the questions that came in earlier on. And then once the chat feature is enabled again, we will allow the, inshallah, participants to be able to ask questions again, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, so before that, of course, we have the final Imam that's going to be covered by Sheikh Mishkat, and I'm going to hand it over to him right now, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I'd like to thank everyone for listening in today, and jazakumullahu khairan to all the asatidha who have been who have contributed so far. And to be honest, you know, when it's at the end and you're waiting and waiting, I feel like there's more pressure on me. But alhamdulillah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from all the asatidha and all of you that are attending today, inshallah ta'ala. I think when we talk about the A'immatul Arba'a, the 4 Imams, the great Imams, I think the half an hour slots that we are given, or 25 minutes, would not give justice. You know, it's not enough time to go through everything. So I think what my target will be to go through, and I think everyone has done that, is cover certain important parts of their lives, or things that we feel, or parts that we feel that really stuck out or stood out, inshallah ta'ala. So inshallah we'll begin now. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. As always, we begin with talking about the biography of the Imam, and the first thing that we will start with is his name. He is Abu Abdullah Ahmad. His name is Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Hanbal al-Shaybani, rahimahullah rahmatan wasi'a. And he was an Imam of Ahlus Sunnati wal Jama'ah and a Shaykh al-Islam. He was the founder of the madh-hab of the madh-hab of Ahmad ibn Hanbal. It was formed from his name, or as we say, through his fiqh and through his jurisprudence. Through his he was the one that he began and founded this madhab. Naam, afwan. So I don't know if you can hear me because I've got a fan next to me, it's affecting me. So just give me a moment. 1 second. So, it's very warm today. So I think that's better now. Okay, so he was born on in Rabi' al-Awwal in the year 164 بعد الهجرة, 164 years after Hijrah. And it was around, we could say, I don't know if you can see my screen actually. This is one thing I just realized. Just bear with me. Sorry, guys. There we go. I apologize for that. If you didn't see the screen. Naam. So he is Abu Abdullah Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Hanbal al-Shaybani. And I think some of the information that we're providing today will be provided to you after the course. So no need to worry, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So coming back to where he was born in Marw in Khurasan in Persia, and his father, his name's Muhammad, and his grandfather's name was Hanbal. Okay, and he, when he was young, a very young age, tender age, his father had passed away. So his mother took over, and his father had left behind, as Ustad mentioned a few moments ago, an estate by which she had the opportunity to remarry, or she had the opportunity to take that money, but instead she spent all of her efforts towards her son. And this is a very important thing to mention, that many of the great scholars, like Ustad said, is behind every great man there is a great woman. And subhanallah, the mother of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal helped and really persevered and, you know, made an effort. And we as teachers in today as teachers, we see where students of knowledge, when they, from a very tender age, when we find very talented students, we find that they are usually, they have the backing, they have the support from their parents, their father, their mother, and this is something that, you know, for us to see and observe that we can support others and our children, inshaAllah ta'ala, make the intention to support our children to become great scholars. That is, there's no harm in that. And it's the teaching that we can see that how Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, who was a defender of the deen, he was supported by his mother. May Allah bless her and bless him. So their ethnicity was that they were Arab, asl, yani Arabi, al-asl, although they spoke Persian, and when they moved to Baghdad at a young age, then his mother took him to study and ensured that he studied, and he had memorized the Quran at a young age. There are some books that he has also, Imam, just because it's a short biography, and then I'm going to move on straight to how he studied, and then some important times in his life. So there is the great Musnad ibn Hanbal, which we'll talk about as well, and the Radd al-Jahmiyya wa Zanadiqa. Again, these books refer to what his achievements were. So that's why these books I've mentioned here. There are other books that he has done, Fada'il al-Sahaba, Usul al-Sunnah, and others. But the notable works are Musnad of Imam ibn Hanbal, and we'll discuss this in a moment. So his early life and education, first of all, Ahmad, as we said, memorized the Quran at an early age. Like other great scholars of the Ummah who have done this musahama and had made this effort and a great achievement, they have struggled so much and they persevered and they studied. And this is the legacy they have left behind. The four madh-habs that we have today would not be here today without the efforts of these great ulama. So Ahmad rahimahullah, Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, memorized the Quran at an early age. And one thing to note is we need to know the situation of Baghdad at that time. Very important. And By now, if you have Imam Abu Hanifa and then Imam Malik and then Imam al-Shafi'i and Imam Ahmed and his contemporaries, they're there, and the fiqh and the usul and the system, methodical systems are now being developed further, and now it's all set, and there are books written, and knowledge is very, very accessible. And Baghdad at that time was a political capital, okay, of the Khilafah, and most of, very importantly, it was the center for Islamic scholarship and civilization. And what would happen is, due to that, when you have a lot of coming to and going, toing and froing, and a lot of people mixing, also we had a lot of influence, or there was a penetrating influence of new cultures like the Greek philosophy, including Greek philosophy, and Indian mythology, and also Persian tradition. I just want you to set sort of the your mind into how the situation was. A lot of knowledge, right, in Baghdad. Okay, and his mother had sent him to study. And the first thing he did was he went to read under Imam Abu Yusuf, who's the most intelligent student, as you know, of Imam Abu Hanifa. So you see the link between the Imam, and there is a overlap, or we can say always one is benefiting from the other. So Abu Yusuf was one of his greatest students, and Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal traveled or went to Abu Yusuf to take knowledge from him. And Imam Abu Yusuf was known for, or Imam Abu Hanifa's madh-hab, and his students were known for what? For fiqh, for the knowledge of fiqh and usul. And so Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal had gone there, and a lot of people have this discussion, where is Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal a muhaddith, or a great scholar of hadith, or a great scholar of fiqh? And you could say that he was a scholar of both, fiqh and hadith, rahimahullah rahmatan wasi'a, which we'll find out in a moment. So he studied in the beginning, he studied fiqh, okay, reading under Abu Yusuf, okay, and he studied, then he took so many of the benefits from Imam Abu Yusuf, and understood a lot about what he'd already studied in Baghdad. And then again, he continued his pursuit of knowledge and hadith, in particular, the study of hadith, when he was 15 years old, for about 7 years. So he began in Baghdad in itself, and he had students such as Hushaym ibn Bashir and others who he spent a lot of time with, and studied a lot of, for example, about Kitab al-Hajj, many hadith from Kitab al-Hajj, and the chapter of Hajj, and other subjects. So he spent time studying hadith first in Baghdad, but then soon enough he had realized that Baghdad, okay, I've exhausted myself of exhausted all energy into all seeking hadith here in Baghdad, but what shall I do? He realized that students of hadith would travel. So he began his extensive travel, and he began to travel to Basra, and other places like Kufa and Hijaz meaning Mecca and Medina, and also to Yemen. Okay, and he also traveled to Basra around 5 times, and around a similar number of times to Mecca and Medina to perform Hajj. And one of his notable teachers, he had a friend, student with him, was Yahya ibn Ma'in, and he would travel with him. And he went to Yemen, and he spent some time with Ustad his Sheikh Abdul Razak, and he learnt from him. And he separately went to, with Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, my dear brothers and sisters, he was very determined person, and he wanted to seek knowledge. And just like the other Imam, they're very focused. And when he wanted to do is, even when he went to Mecca for Hajj, he would meet some of these great scholars, but he would not stay in Mecca or Medina although he had the ability and the opportunity to study hadith and fiqh, or seek knowledge from the ulama in Mecca and Medina, he would perform Hajj and do so, but at the same time he would go back home, then go back to Yemen to meet, for example, his teacher Abdul Razak with Yahya ibn Ma'in, specifically spend money and mujahada. And this is the key point, that we realize that this mujahada and this struggle and this effort, that regardless, they would go and spend money, and that was where they received the barakah, or they, I would say, the great scholars, their knowledge had left a legacy. We know the famous saying, "Man jadda fawajad." Whoever struggles, they will, and makes a real effort, they are the ones who will get what they want. They will achieve what they would like to. So those great scholars, it gives us a sort of idea and knowledge, great knowledge, that they are, subhanallah, very, very should I say, they made an effort. They made a serious effort, and it can be only an inspiration for us even today to continue and try to learn and study these great scholars, and see how they achieved what they had achieved, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So this is the introduction and sort of like about his education, and a summary very simply on Imam Ahmad's scholarship is he studied fiqh under Abu Yusuf, the student of Imam Abu Hanifa. So there's a link to Imam Abu Hanifa here. He studied hadith locally and internationally, meaning where he was in Baghdad, and he also traveled extensively to take hadith from many scholars of hadith. And he would even, when you would find a kitab, because at that time now things were being mudawwan and written, right? He would find a hadith, but he would say he would rather travel to get the hadith and listen to it from the sheikh, subhanallah. And the whole point was to achieve the shorter chain of narration, so that he would have a ijazah, or a shorter sanad to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He'd hear it himself. And he also met the great Al-Imam Al-Shafi'i, who Ustad mentioned a few moments ago about. But by that time, obviously, Imam Al-Shafi'i had developed his methodological approach to fiqh. So he had a set, and his great work, Al-Risala. And so therefore, in constructing and deducing rulings and judgments, there was a set system, and he would be able to also take experience and sort of learn from Imam Shafi'i. So he used to go and review, and where he had the knowledge of hadith as well, he would, or the riwayat, he would be able to review and discuss and learn from Imam Shafi'i. Okay, and subhanallah, I think somebody shared recently a video to me, and we can find that there's about the I didn't want to actually mention this, but since I'll just spend a minute explaining that Imam Ahmad came to Imam Shafi'i, and he mentioned about a hadith, the hadith of fasting in Yom Arafah. Fasting in Yom Arafah, that there were two narrations, okay, and the narration, one narration would say that it said, or was collected, that would say that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibited anyone to fast on the 9th day of Yom al-Hijj, Dhul Hijjah, 9th day, the day when everyone is in Arafah, those who are performing Hajj. At the same time, the hadith that the fasting on the day of Arafah expiates a year's worth of sins. So he asked Imam Shafi, how do you reconcile with this? How do you, when you have two different hadith? And subhanallah, Imam Shafi'i said, do you not know the hadith of Aisha? And his wife reported, and this is another report, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibited or did not allow anyone to fast on the day of Arafah for those who are in Arafah, bi'Arafah. So that means those people who are only performing Hajj and not the others. And that was how he also learned Imam Abu Hanifa from Imam Shafi, and each one kind of reviewed and discussed and learned from each other. So now, alhamdulillah, so this is a good understanding of just a small touch of what Imam Ahmad did, and all of the scholars studied vast, they had hundreds of scholars whom they studied under. Now this Musnad of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal is something that I must mention, and it is his greatest work of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. So when he came, decided to go to collect hadith, rahimahullah rahmatan wasi'ah, he decided to collect, and at that time the hadith, documenting hadith was still developing, and before you'd have different types of collections, some that were not classified, right, just collected bits and a piece of a hadith here and a hadith there, then others that were put into a book and collected. Later on, even in the classification and in the grouping of the hadith, it was either through subject wise, which we find today in the books of hadith, for example in Bukhari and Muslim and Sahih Sitta that we have. But the Musnad just came before that. And the Musnad was the time when documentation of hadith was more focused on really to looking at the isnad and the chain of narration, which linked the hadith to the Prophet ﷺ through the narrator who narrated it, who was usually a Sahabi. So for example, Aisha radiallahu anha narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said al-hadith, or Abu Huraira, or any of the Sahaba. What a Musnad is where all the hadith were narrated by one companion. They would put, regardless of the subject matter, they would bring it under that name, particular name, and collect all the hadith. So these kind of books, the Masanid, were difficult to sort of navigate unless you were a specialist in hadith. Okay, so let's just look at Musnad of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal a little bit into detail. The main objective of the Musnad, as I said, is to compile the largest number of hadith for the sake of why? For the objective was to preserve and record. That was the main focus. Okay. Now the Musnad of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal contains 40,000 hadith, including 10,000 repetitions. Okay, where you'd have another narration or another route by which the same hadith would come. And it would be and from around 700 companions. Okay, so you'd have all the names of the Sahabi and Sahabiyat, companions, and under them all of their hadith. It was also derived from a vast mass of 750,000 hadith, it is said, and it took the Imam around 20 years to complete. So his life was dedicated, a big portion of his life was dedicated to this Musnad of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Abdullah, his son, was the one who consolidated the work, because before he died, he'd realized that a lot of his things, was not written or put together. It was in different places, and it needed to be consolidated and checked through. He passed away soon after, and so Imam Ahmad's son Abdullah is the one who actually brings it together and compiled it together in the arrangement according to brought it together as a kitab. And one thing to remember, as I said to you, is that Imam Musnad compilers, they arrange it in the name of companions. And just to give you an idea, how would they select the companions? For example, they would begin with the Khulafa al-Arba'a, the four Khulafa al-Rashidun, the caliphs, Abu Bakr, first beginning with Imam Khalifa Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, then Umar, then Uthman, then Ali radiallahu anhum ajma'in. And then after that, the other six who are given the glad tidings of Jannah, the Asharatul Mubashshara Okay, and then after that, people who had, for example, attended the Battle of Badr, Hudaybiyah, and thereafter the conquest of Mecca, and then after the female narrators of hadith ila akhiri. And different scholars, different scholars did that arrangement, and they put the musnad together. But the thing to the important note here, or thing to note, is that Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal's giant contribution, great contribution, was this musnad of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Many scholars note that, although there's a difference of opinion whether they are fabricated or weak hadith, most of the hadith can be found to be sahih, and there are some hadith that or sahih or hasan and other grades. But in terms of da'if and mawdu', meaning weak or fabricated hadith, there was a slight difference of opinion amongst some hadith specialists, scholars. But we can be sure that, insha'Allah ta'ala, even those who did refer to it as mawdu' or fabricated actually did not mean it in that sense, but meant by weak. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. So this, and Allah knows best, in terms of the contribution to hadith. When you want to go and search, or when the ulama of hadith need to search for hadith, they can find that in the musnad there is a narration by Ahmad, collected by Ahmad. What is the fa'idah? Collected by Ahmad, who collected from his ustad all the way to sahabi or sahabiyah. And this is the benefit of the musnad. Now we come to one part of his life and his effort that he made, and I don't have much time, but I'll be quick, insha'Allah ta'ala, is the great mihna, or in Arabic, the ulama discussed the mihna, or the trial, and what happened exactly. In a simple way, I'd like to say that, look, the Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he was there at a time we just discussed before, where a lot of the external influences were coming in to the Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah and the traditionalist or the orthodox Islam, especially in theology. And so therefore, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahimahullah, was a defender of the deen and defender of the theology of Islam, rahimahullahu rahmatan wasi'ah. What happened? There was a mihna, and the mihna, meaning the trial, meaning for him, he put an effort. He underwent a struggle that no other imam went through, and he was, as far as he was also tortured. He was in prison, and he still kept to his word and his principles, and he would not bow down to the requests of the rulers. So when did this happen? Towards the end of the reign of the Abbasid Khalifa. His name was Al-Ma'mun. And that at that time, the Mu'tazila, okay, it's a philosophical school, Mu'tazila, they were ascending, okay. What was the issue about? The mihna was mainly about, and in particular about, in regards to the position of the Quran in relation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We all know that Muslims, we as Muslims believe that what the Quran is, Kalamullah al-Munazzal. It is the speech of Allah that has been revealed to Muhammad through Angel Jibreel alayhi salatu wassalam. Naam. But this Mu'tazila group, they would add that the Quran was makhluq, the Quran was created. In the sense that it didn't share the attribute of being ever present. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Kalamullah al-Munazzal. Kalamullah, speech of Allah. Is it created? La abadan. It is not created. But they would say that no, only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have this attribute and nothing else, not his, the Quran, which they believe was created and given to the people, or as a creation. This was a great test for Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. And Imam Ahmad, in the court, when he was called up, he mentioned that it is never mentioned in the Quran that the Quran was makhluk, nor did the hadith mention, nor did the Sahaba, nor did any of the people before. So why do we discuss and get involved in these theological arguments? Okay, and just keep to saying that this is as Allah said, this is Allah's words that He spoke to, that He revealed. Naam. And this is the stance of Ahlus Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Now, I want to just summarize, because it's a long story, but in a diagram, I think it's easier for you to absorb. I know it's the end of the day now. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from you all. So it begins with Al-Ma'mun. I don't know if you can see this. So Al-Ma'mun was the Khalifa who made the actual order during the end of the Abbasid period, right? He made the order to Ishaq ibn Ibrahim, who is his deputy, tamam, to go and collect all the scholars and anyone who says that the Quran was created. Naam. Anyone who said that the Quran was created, go and round them up and tell them that, look, you've got to believe in what we're saying or go by our stance, the official stance, the official decree. And we talk about, how scholars in every time were tested with the rulers. The scholars, the Imams, should be those who the rulers go to as the Ahlul Hilli wal Aqd, those advisors who advise the rulers. But unfortunately, what happened, the tests and tribulations of the Ummah, is that there will be rulers who would have their own sort of interests. Okay, and so, although Al-Ma'mun, he had some knowledge and he was well versed, but still, but he was influenced by the Mu'tazili thought. So that's why he said, no, I want you to order and to say that the Quran is makhluk, because he had that influence from the Mu'tazili group. So after that, when he was ordered to go, then what happened? As he arrived to the courts, or before he arrived, Al-Ma'mun had passed away. Al-Ma'mun had passed away, and his brother Al-Mu'tasim, was took charge. And he wasn't a scholar, but he was just a commander, and he thereafter arrived. When Imam Ahmad arrived at the door of Al-Mu'tasim, all he was thinking was, he was bent upon just making sure that the order of his brother, because he was grieving his brother, that he would make sure that he would apply that. And so therefore he wasn't listening, even though Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal tried to converse and speak, but there was to no avail. And then he was subjected to physical torture and taken to prison repeatedly over a period of 28 months. But Imam Ahmad would still not budge, and subhanallah, the mihna, even in this, if you see the siyar, the books of siyar about what happened in the prison and how people would come outside and ask, and people wait to study with the Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal and listen to him, but they were not able to. Remember, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, I'll talk about when he, towards the end, in the last minute, that he didn't teach until, he didn't start formally his circles until he was about 40. Okay, but coming back here, what happened? Once again, Al-Ma'mun made the order for Ishaq ibn Ibrahim, his deputy, to collect all the scholars, but to say that the Quran was to apply the belief that the Quran was created. But Imam Ahmad refused, and before he arrived to the courts, Ma'mun passed away, and Al-Mu'tasim arrived, or Al-Mu'tasim took over, and he then wanted to ensure that his brother's wishes was kept. So he did not budge at all. He did not allow, or he did not accept that, and he imprisoned him, and actually he went through physical torture. So much so that that we find that he was whipped and lashed, that even the lash would stick into his body and they'd have to pull it out. and this is this is how much pain and difficulty Imam Ahmad went through, and he will not budge, rahimahullah rahmatan wasi'a. But because of this, Imam Ahmad's popularity would increase further, and people admired this, right? So they had no choice. They had to release him, subhanallah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help. And then after, he would stay under house arrest still for the rest of the reign of Al-Mu'tasim and his son Al-Wathiq, both Al-Wathiq. And then finally, in a short period, Al-Mutawakkil, who in 232 after Hijrah, when he took over as the Khalifa, then he leaned towards the fiqh, the hadith scholars of fiqh and hadith. Among them was Imam Ahmad, who was obviously one of the top figure at that time. And then he allowed him to resume to his teaching. There was a period for about 5 years where he was not allowed to teach. And this is the summary of his mihna. And there's so many smaller details and minutiae in this whole story and qissa. But the thing that we take is that they all made an effort and they all struggled for the deen. And because of their struggle, today we have the 4 Imams, and we have Imam Abu Hanifah, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi, and Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. And Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal's role, according to the scholars, was great in the defending the deen, in the usul, in its beliefs and creed and theology, as well as preserving the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was also, by his own right, a faqih and a jurist, and his madh-hab was formed, and he became a mufti towards the end of his life. And many, we can find that many of the scholars, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal himself, he had that base and grounding. He studied under Imam, the student of Abu Hanifah, the greatest student, Abu Yusuf, and also he learned to meet and study by Imam Ash-Shafi'i, the great Ash-Shafi'i, rahimahullahu rahmatan wasi'a. Each one complemented the other, and they were content. And subhanallah, this teaches us that they were, they were the, we understand when some people say that, hell, is there amongst the differences of that we have in the ummah, that is it a rahmah and mercy? And some scholars have resorted to saying that it is not a rahmah and mercy, but it depends on what the context. Some, especially later scholars today, they have said that. But when an imam says this, it is for what he says is for the people that he says it to. Who is he directing it to? For those people who are extreme and spend their time constantly talking about qila wa qal, he said and she said, he said and that person said, and continuously in jadal and jidal and munadharat and arguing. For those people, yes, this is not a rahmah. They should not be. But for those people who understand to tolerate and to understand the differences and learn to live amongst together, this is the teaching of al-Islam. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says in the Quran, Ya ayyuhan nas, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha, from a male and female. O people, we have created you from a man and woman. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ, we have made you from shu'ub, tribes and nations. لِمَاذَا لِتَعَارَفُوا, so you may know one another. And from this, the ulama have, we can see that if all of these 4 unanimously, we all agree that these 4 madhahib are here for us and to stay, and then we learn to respect the adillah and the proofs by which each of these followers went by, and they followed their imma who in turn followed the Quran and the Hadith and the correct interpretation. Each one had a respect for the other. So Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal had studied all the kutub, many, and benefited from the other madhahib as well, subhanallah. So anyway, to end, I think they have run out of time. Barakallahu feek. There was a few other things I wanted to mention, but I know that it's very, very late in the afternoon, and this is why it's difficult as well to go through. But anyway, just a conclusion that, he had a good upbringing, a noble family, Safiya, Shaybaniya. She was she was instrumental in his upbringing, and this is why we should be instrumental in our children's upbringing, and we should follow that tradition, inshallah ta'ala. He was very principled. We understand that he would not give up, even after he was offered money. He was offered a lot of, he was threatened and he was offered money, and he would not take the money. Even when he was forced to take the money and wealth, he would give it to the poor. And his mother had used the estate, the money of his estate, of his father's estate, to teach him, and only spend it on ilm, inshallah ta'ala. And he lived a very simple life. He was very humble, sahib wada', and he had sabr, and he was very, very pious. And he persevered and fought for the preservation of the correct belief of defending al-Islam. فَرَحِمَهُ اللَّهُ رَحْمَةً وَاسِعًا. I apologize. My start was a bit slow, but I hope we all benefit from today's session. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept it from all of the teachers and all of you who attended, that every moment that we spend in seeking knowledge and learning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is rewarding us, and the angels make istighfar for us bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I'm really sorry for going over, brother. Shabir.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Not at all. Alhamdulillah, we all were enjoying, and we wish that you could have
No,
for longer.
I was very nervous because it came towards the end, so it's not my thing, I'm not a speaker, mashallah.
Barakallah feek. Alhamdulillah, we all enjoyed, and Jazakallah khair to everyone that's been tuning in. We, as you've probably seen from the messages, that Q&A and the comment section is now open, so any questions that you have, any of our instructors, inshallah, regardless of whichever Imam it was, of course, please do keep it relevant to the topic and the theme at hand. Please don't send in any kind of external questions. Just stick to the topic of the Imams and anything linked to that, inshallah. And inshallah, we're just going to wait for some questions to come in. There's already a few, so I'm just going to get into some of them, and then I'm going to hand it over to the other instructors, inshallah, because I actually have another class in a few minutes I have to get to teach online, inshallah. So I'm just gonna, there's a few questions based on the Imam that I covered at the beginning, which is Imam Abu Hanifah rahimahullah, just regarding some of his practices, so more kind of away from his fiqh and everything else, and more dealing with his personal practices. So for example, we mentioned how he would, as is mentioned by some of his students, that the Imam would finish the Quran, perhaps sometimes, in a night, in a single night, he would do one khatam of the Quran. And others mention how, he would have performed wudu, he would have performed the morning prayer with the same wudu as the night prayer. So some of you had a few questions about this, like, is that okay, or is that against the sunnah? Hasn't the Prophet ﷺ mentioned a few things here and there? So obviously, first and foremost, we've been through the life of Imam Abu Hanifah rahimahullah, and the first thing to clarify is no doubt that if anyone is going to uphold the sunnah, and if anyone is going to have access to the knowledge of the Prophet ﷺ, it would be the man who had access to the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. So no doubt, regardless of what we may feel towards this, Imam Abu Hanifah rahimahullah, first and foremost, to clarify, he would have known these ahadith. He knows what the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is, no doubt. However, having said that, I have to also add that in terms of his personal practices, this was of course personal to him, number one, right? So he didn't tell us to do the same. He didn't say, it wasn't part of his madh-hab in any of his books that he said you have to pray fajr with the same wudu as Isha. Personal practice is personal practice. That's number one. Let's clarify that, right? There's many things that you probably do, right? There's many things that I probably do, for example, in the month of Ramadan, that are personal to us, right? At specific time, that is just more convenient for us. For Imam Abu Hanifah, that's one thing. It's his personal practice. And secondly, also, he is an exception of exceptions. Like, you have certain people from the past, and it's not just Imam Abu Hanifah. By the way, some Sahaba would do this. So if whether you accept Imam Abu Hanifah was a tabi'i or not, we have authentic narrations suggesting that there were companions of the Prophet ﷺ that would complete, one khatam, complete recital of the Quran in their salah in the night. Does that make sense, right? So even the companions would do this, but again, that was their personal practice. They never enforced that on anyone else. And there were exceptions. There were many exceptions to the general rule, right? So we don't base our fiqh, or we don't base our understanding on exceptions, right? These people were, sometimes forget whether they did it or not. Just think to yourself, how did they do it? Like, sometimes when I think back, how did he even do one complete recital of the Quran in his salah in a single night? Like right now, if I try and finish the Quran, right, even a hafiz of the Quran will struggle to do that. How did Imam Abu Hanifa do it? How did the companions do it? Right? If I start after Isha, I doubt I'm going to finish by Fajr, if I'm completely honest with you, like in salah as well. But do you know what? One thing that they're different when it comes to the distinguishing factor between them and us is they had barakah. They had these divine blessings in their time. And like I said, they were exceptional. They did things that we perhaps may never be able to do. They had so much barakah in their time that they were able to do this, right? With the wudu situation, like, it doesn't necessarily mean that he did it by choice, right? It just means that he was so engrossed in his seeking of knowledge. He was so engrossed in his prayers that it was just time to pray. And there's nothing wrong with praying, salah with the same wudu. No one says that you have to perform wudu. It could be better, you could argue, but otherwise, generally speaking, this is perfectly fine. So, yeah, this is I think this was one of the main questions for me that came regarding Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. And there's some other questions. So let me just read some of the questions out, inshallah. And if anyone wants to jump in from our instructors, feel free to do so. So we have, let me just have a quick, we've covered, some of them have already been covered in the segments. Anything regarding, let's have a look. There's loads coming in right now. So let's have a look, inshallah. Teachers, if there's any other questions that you guys are seeing that relates to you, feel free to jump in, inshallah, anytime. And
Assalamu alaikum. Shabir, can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you.
I'm just gonna saw quite a few questions here. I think there's some that are pertinent for Sheikh Mishkat to answer regarding his talk, and some for Sister Salihah. I just want to address something really quickly about, there's a lot of questions regarding this idea about should we follow a madhab or not, and is it incumbent for us to follow madhab, and was Imam Abu Hanifa tabi'i? And what I want to just, if you guys can give me a moment, I want to show you guys something. I have compiled here a document which I'm going to share now, and I'm going to show you where each of the Imams they belong. Yeah. So can you guys, Shabir, can you guys see my, Shabir, can you see my document?
Yeah, I can see it now. Yeah, perfectly fine.
So this is a guide that I whipped up a while back on how to do takhrij. Takhrij is the science of working out whether hadith is sahih and da'if. Now I want to explain something really clearly, right? The data that I have here is from a book called Taqrib al-Tahdhib, right? Written by the Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani. So your scholars of today, your scholars of the past, of the near past, regardless of whether they were people who followed madhab or not, everybody uses Ibn Hajar, everybody, okay? With regards to working out the dates of narrators, how sahih these narrators are and whatnot. Now, if you look at Ibn Hajar's own categorization, look at where he puts Abu Hanifa. I'll show you now, right? So you have, okay, An-Nu'man bin Thabit. You see this one here? An-Nu'man bin Thabit. This is Abu Hanifa's name, yeah, as you learned today. Yeah? He puts Abu Hanifa at the final, which is what we call Asr al-Khamisa. This is the Tabi'een, not the Atba'u Tabi'een, the second generation. The latter part of the second generation. This is what we call the Kibaru Atba'i Tabi'een, the major scholars of the Atba'u Tabi'in, the third generation, still within the Salaf. Imam Malik's at the top of that one. See, Imam Malik ibn Anas here. Imam al-Shafi'i, he puts, if you look for Muhammad ibn Idris, so you got here, Muhammad ibn Idris al-Shafi'i, here, this one here. What you realize is he puts Muhammad ibn Idris al-Shafi'i at the last section of the Atba'u Tabi'in. The only one who's not part of the Salaf is Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. He was just a little bit late after Imam al-Shafi'i, but he's from the Khalaf, who Ibn Hajar calls al-Akhidin. Al-Akhidin, okay? Which is a generation after, directly after the Salaf. That's one thing I want to show you, okay? Second thing I want to show you is this one here. And this will, inshallah, these things, what they'll do is they'll clarify a lot of issues that you may have. I want to show you a timeline that I've been working on. I want to now change my, right, I've got a new document. I hope you guys can see the new document. If you look at this document, this one, according to, on the right, going like this, you got the Khulafa, okay? Each era. And then next to it, you got the Khulafa. So whether it was Ali radhiallahu anhu, Muawiyah radhiallahu anhu, Yazid, Muawiyah al-Thani, Marwan, Abdul Malik, and so on and so forth. And what you'll notice is you can trace back Imam Abu Hanifah as well as Imam Malik. These guys are taking their fiqh from the generation of Hamad and Nafi'. Malik's madhab comes from Ibn Umar. Abu Hanifa's madhab from Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, Al-Qama, goes all the way up to Ibn Mas'ud. Right? So here's the thing, right? Why am I saying all of this? Why am I saying all of this? Right, I want to stop my share now. I'm saying this to make a point, right? These guys weren't sitting there and randomly conjuring up things in their mind. They were taking directly from their teachers, as their teachers taught them, as the Sahaba taught them. And where needed, they would perform ijtihad. Now, when it comes to, do I have to follow a madhab? Strictly speaking, no, you don't need to follow a madhab. Strictly speaking, you don't need, you're not bound by a madhab. You need to follow Quran and Sunnah, right? Here's my problem, right? Here's the problem. Are you a master of the Arabic language? Have you encompassed hadith? Have you encompassed tafsir? Let me put it very simply. If you think that I have to act upon every hadith of Bukhari, you have not understood Bukhari. Wallahi, there are hadith in Bukhari you cannot act upon because some of them are abrogated. Bukhari says it himself. هذا حديث منسوخ. But the English translator doesn't put it there sometimes. So my point is, the deen is not there for us to, yeah, okay, I've read this one hadith, this is my deen, and I want to keep this as my deen. That's not the point of the deen, right? The deen is you sit there and you look at the whole deen in entirety. A fiqhi conclusion comes after what we say, بعد الاستقراء والتتبع والبحث العميق, after having encompassed, studied the whole thing. And if you do, you can become mujtahid, no problem. But if you're not mujtahid, then you're bound to follow madhab. As Sheikh Salih al-Fawzan, hafidhahullah, in Saudi, he said, you are either a muqallid, a follower, or a mujtahid, or someone who has got the right to actually, put forth a madhab. Why? Because these guys have done the hard work for us. They've looked at everything. They've looked at what were seeming discrepancies, and they have, for us, made it easier to follow the deen. And absolutely, as some people have said, we're not following Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi, Ahmed. We're following the deen through that lens. Because if you don't follow the deen through the lens as nurtured by the Prophet and the Sahaba and the Salaf, then the deen is fair game. Everybody can come up with their own version. Wallahu a'lam. I thought I'll just quickly mention that. I think Sheikh Mishkat, there's quite a lot of questions regarding the time of Ma'mun. So if you want to scan through those questions, and perhaps deal with those questions.
Assalamu alaikum. I just wanted to say also, do you recall the slides that I was said to, the slides, the last 3 slides. Could you go through that just for a second? That I sent you, or no, for everyone. That might be beneficial just to.
Oh, right, yeah.
Do you have that?
Yes.
To share.
I do.
Yeah. I've answered the question regarding Ma'mun, and it was just that the scholars were needed to be, or he needed to have, Al-Ma'mun needed to have people beside them as the advisors. Remember, they have the courts and they have the scholars there, and it would suit him, number one, and also the Mu'tazili thoughts was very logical in the way they would do everything, without looking at the text and the nusus. So he found that more suited to him. So he kind of inclined towards this kind of thinking. But obviously this is something new, and Imam Ahmad saw this straight away, and this was not something from the correct belief of the Salaf, and that's why he stood tall and defended, inshallah ta'ala. But I think you did you see the Ustad, did you see?
Sheikh, I'm going to put it on. I'd like you to talk about it though.
No, I'd like you. Khalas, I'll leave it to you. And okay, so
all right, just an
overview, so because people want to see it visually,
Yeah, no, absolutely,
nice.
Absolutely. So I'll just quickly share this one now.
Ustad Farhan.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just give my last comments before I have to leave for my lesson, inshallah. If that's okay. So I think there's just one question about Imam Abu Hanifa meeting Anas bin Malik, and if that was the same companion who served the Prophet ﷺ. So yeah, I mean that was exactly the same companion who would have served the Prophet ﷺ from around the age of 10 for about 10 years or so until the Prophet ﷺ passed away. And if you look in the ahadith, you will find that the Prophet ﷺ made specific du'as for this companion, Anas bin Malik, and one of the du'as that he made for him was, "Oh Allah, bless him in his children and bless him in his life as well." So we know that Anas bin Malik, he actually was one of the last standing companions, if you could say that. Allah blessed him with a very long life, that he even buried his own children and grandchildren with his own hands, subhanAllah, and he outlived them. So this was the same companion, which makes sense if Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah did meet him. So that was just one question. I think the other general question that I'll let you guys inshallah address is, I think some people are just a bit confused. Not that today's webinar was intending to confuse anyone when it came to madh-habs, because we were really wanted to focus on the Imams themselves and their great legacy. But I think some people are like, what madh-hab should I follow then? So inshallah, you guys can clarify. But I think generally speaking, some people are asking, do I just carry on the way I was? And for me personally, absolutely. Most of us here are at a very basic level. We have not studied. We haven't found any stronger, alternatives. That's like a very, very later stage in our journeys. So for the time being, if our parents, or our teachers were following a certain madhab, and that's what we've been following, then we know they're all correct, inshallah. This is based on the ijtihad. They're all correct, inshallah. So you just carry on, right, as normal. Today's webinar was not supposed to, change. It wasn't intended to make you change or convert to anything. Of course not. Alhamdulillah, even amongst us, teachers here, we have versatility. We don't all follow the same madhab. But alhamdulillah, we respect one another's viewpoints and we respect each other's madhabs. And ultimately, we continue the way we are, inshallah. So that's just one comment that I wanted to make, but I'll let the rest of you, the rest of our shuyukh and ustada comment on that. And inshallah, that's it from me. I have a class in 5 minutes. So I want just jazakumullah khairan to our asatidha for all your efforts.
May Allah bless you for hosting it, Ustad, and your efforts, because you've been here from 2 o'clock.
No, not at all.
Very, very alert. Mashallah.
I've really enjoyed it.
May Allah reward you.
Jazakumullah khair, everyone. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I think Sheikh Ustad Shabir, mashallah, effort, a lot of credit goes to him. He put all this together, to be honest with you. Him and the admin team. Make dua for my admin team, huh? These guys have sleepless nights, subhanallah. as those who are
May
with
Allah accept it from them, inshallah.
Ameen.
Inshallah. May Allah reward them.
I want to quickly go through the slides. These are slides that Sheikh Mishkat made, really, really nice slides. I'm going to go through them. And then I want, Sister Salih, if you could jump in as well, and I'm going to direct some questions to you to inshallah make it easier. I'd like to hear your insight as well. So first things first, I think big problem is we don't study history enough, right? The good thing about these types of diagrams is that what they do is they categorize, they allow us to visualize where everything was and how things function. So if you look at the diagram, you'll see that Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad Hanbal, all of them are bunched together. In fact, if you were to zoom out of this diagram, and if we were to put all the scholars in this diagram, you'll see that there was a zamana of fiqh. There was a time, an era of fiqh where the fuqaha came. And we're not just talking about Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi'i, Ahmad. There were other madhahib, by the way. There were many other madhahib there at the time that have not survived throughout the ages. Portions of them have survived, but they were all clustered around that era. Straight after that, you kind of get the era of the muhaddithin. You got Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, Abu Dawood, all students of Imam Ahmad Hanbal. Then you've got Imam Tirmidhi, Imam Nasa'i, or Nasa'i, depending on which part of the world you come from, Ibn Majah, all studying from Imam Bukhari. And they're all clustered together. And this was really and truly a golden age. Not the golden age, because the golden age was the age of the Sahaba. But this was truly another golden age of academic excellence. And to appreciate that, you need to visualize where everything was happening. And you can see that Abu Hanifa and Imam Malik were actually contemporaries. They were there together with each other. You can see that for a great portion. And Imam Malik and Imam Abu Hanifa actually met each other in Hajj. And Imam Malik said, and you can find this in the footnotes of Bada'i' al-Sana'i', right? Where the Sheikh quotes Imam Malik saying that when I met Abu Hanifa in Hajj, I'll tell you one thing about Abu Hanifa. If he wanted, he could take this pillar of iron and convince you it's made out of gold. And Abu Hanifa had a great many things to say about Imam Dar al-Hijrah, Imam Malik. And then you can see that Imam Shafi'i comes in the same, he dies in the same year as Abu Hanifa. You can see that line there. But he comes in the same era as Imam Malik. He studies with Imam Malik. And then, of course, Imam Ahmad Hanbal studying with Imam Shafi'i. If we move over, I think this is a really good chart. Inshallah, we're going to give out the, hopefully we'll do some last minute edits and we'll give out the slides. They'll be very beneficial for you. But this is a really good chart because what it does is it summarized the basic details for every one of the muassisin, of the founders of each madhab, be it Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Muhammad, or rather Muhammad ibn Idris al-Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad Hanbal. So you can see the dates of birth, the dates of death, which city they focused in and around, some of their students and some of their main books. So Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh, you've done a fantastic job there. Lastly, this is very, very interesting that what the Sheikh has done is he's collated for us the usul of each madhab.
Ustad, I didn't want you to go through the last one, but it's no problem. But it wasn't complete, but no problem. The main thing is the first two for the benefit of a lot of people don't. Some people here, mashallah, may Allah bless you all, attended. They're not sorry to interject, Ustad. Just a lot of some of you are not aware of what is a madhab, school of thought, and how can you just discuss that for a few minutes, Ustad?
Yeah. So I've noticed that. One question is what is a madhab, and the second question is which madhab do I follow? So I want to try and answer those, and then I'm hoping that Sheikh and Mr. Salih as well, you can jump in and sort of help me out here. So look, first of all, what does madhab mean? Madhab means methodology. Madhab, in its most basic form, means a methodology. Now, what you need to understand is when you look at the Quran and Sunnah, the ulama right from the get-go, from the Sahaba's time, have looked at the Quran and Sunnah in the absence of the Prophet ﷺ, and they have tried to deduce the truth, which is closest to Quran and Sunnah. Okay? Problem is we don't have the Prophet here today. A very naive answer would be, oh, I follow the Quran and Sunnah. What, nobody else does? Yani. Do you get what I mean? It's a very naive answer that I follow. Well, no, everybody tries to follow Quran and Sunnah, but you don't have the Prophet here to tell you what to do. So what do? We go to the Quran and Hadith. Now, when we go to the Quran and Hadith, me and you may not see eye to eye. In fact, if I was to give the Quran to every individual in this group right now, we will have, how many people online? 112 madhahib we will have. Because everybody's going to interpret according to their own understanding. Question is, how do we interpret the deen in the absence of the Prophet? So let us go to Mu'adh ibn Jabal, radiallahu anhu. When the Prophet ﷺ sent him to Yemen, he said before he left, he said to Mu'adh, "Oh Mu'adh, if a matter comes to you, what will you do?" He said, "I will look in the Quran." The Prophet said, "If you don't find it in the Quran," he said, I will refer to the Sunnah. If you don't find it in the Sunnah, then what? He said, "I will look and see if there's any ijma' in one, according to one narration. According to other, I will do my own ijtihad." Now, if a scholar does ijtihad, if he's right, he gets 2 rewards. If he's wrong, but he was sincere, he still gets 1 reward. A madhab is an endeavor to look at the whole of the Sharia, all of the literature that we have in its entirety, and give final conclusions on what to do, how to pray, how to fast, how to give zakah. Now, naturally, depending on how you understand, there are some slight differences. I'll give you a simple example. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says regarding the iddah of a divorcee, iddah of a divorced woman, ثَلَاثَةُ قُرُوء, that let her wait for 3 quru. Now, the problem with the word quru is, in Arabic, it can either mean the period of menstrual bleeding or the period of purity between each menstrual bleeding. Because in Arabic, the word can be used for both. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if he wanted, he could have said hayd or tuhur. He didn't. He could have said thalathatu hiyad, right? He didn't. He said quru. Now, Imam al-Shafi'i, he understands this to be 3 periods of purity. Imam Abu Hanifah understands this to be 3 periods of bleeding. Now, they all have the evidences in trying to substantiate what is right. They first use Quran. That's what this diagram actually is. Then they all refer to the Sunnah. If they can't find the answer in the Sunnah, they go to ijma'. What is ijma'? Scholarly consensus, not you or your and mine. There's consensus of the ulama. Do they have consensus on this particular matter? If they don't find the answer to consensus, they use an intellectual device called qiyas, or analogical deduction, where they look into the Sharia and they try and find a similar mas'ala, matter, and they draw an analogy from it. If they cannot find it through qiyas, someone has to provide an answer. Okay, what do we do with blood transfusions? Can we give blood transplants? Can we do blood transplant? Can we do organ transplant? These are questions of today. Can we stun the chicken? You will not find answer in Quran and Sunnah. You need ulama to do this. What the 4 madhabs have done is they have looked at the Quran and Sharia in entirety, as many others did, but the only ones that have survived are these 4, and they have given us a final set of final conclusions on the deen. And the differences, by the way, let me just make this point clear. There are no differences between the 4 madhab on the core aspects. The differences are on what we call the furu'i matters, the subsidiary matters, where there is a gray area, room for difference of opinion. In an ideal situation, we don't want difference of opinion. But where there is a room for difference of opinion, then khalas, there's that difference of opinion. And if you are a true student of fiqh, wallahi, pick up Mughni by Ibn Qudama, pick up Bidatul Mujtahid by Ibn Rushd. If you're a true student of fiqh, you're going to it scares you. You step back and you're like, hold on, I have to have madhab. I can't go on like this. There's too much out there. I need some guidance. Coming on to the question, wallah alam, that's my best answer. Coming to the question of which madhab you should follow. There's no harm in whichever. If you have been following a madhab, la bas, you can follow the madhab. But ideally, study. When you are convinced, you accept that madhab. Should you pick and mix? Picking and mixing between madhabs, if you don't know what you're doing, is going to be problematic. Because when you think of madhab, you're thinking of the fiqh conclusions. Each of those conclusions are built upon what we call usul. The usuls, if you pick and mix the matters, the usul, there'll be a discrepancy in your usul, and you'll find yourself in a heap of problems. right? It's not Woolworth's pick and mix Deen, all right? Now, the example I'll give you is imagine you have 4 buildings. You have an apartment building, you have a house, you have an igloo, you have a tent. Each one of them are built from separate blocks, if you will. If you start mixing and matching, what's going to happen? Your building's going to topple. You can't, because the usul are different in each madhab. However, having said this, if as a student of knowledge you've looked at all of these matters and you've come to the conclusion that I'm more convinced, even though I'm Hanafi, I'm more convinced by the opinion of Imam Shafi'i, I will adopt this opinion. Having thoroughly studied that, there's no harm in you adopting that opinion. Wallahu a'lam. I will ask, Saleh, would you like to jump in?
I would actually, just on that point, I just wanted to add that, saying it's not just a matter of being convinced. I would say that, you're obviously studying with a sheikh, a reliable sheikh, somebody who, you trust, but also, to be under the shade of somebody like that. So not necessarily, independently studying off a book. I would always recommend having access to ulama and then being able to make decisions like this. And on that point, I just wanted to add something that I forgot to mention earlier in my talk. So Abdullah ibn Abdul Hakam, he mentioned that the companions, they all differed in the branches, al-furu', as you mentioned, and they split into factions. So we're talking about the Imams, yeah? And each one of them was correct in himself. So this is going back to the 4 main madh-habs, that they're all correct in themselves. And like you said, they differed in the furu'. And just looking at this chart here, so obviously I did Imam Malik, and we talked about how he used the qawl al-sahabi, the ijma', and also we talked about amalu ahl al-Medina and why it was so big for him. So because, he was born in Medina, he grew up in that environment, he understood the importance, if you like, of the Sahaba, and because there were so many scholars and jurists still around because they were early days. So that's why Amal Ahl al-Medina was an important aspect for him, and that's why he differed with other madhahibs. So I think it's important to point those out. And naturally, if you're then you rise to a level where you can understand these sciences, then of course you can make a decision. Otherwise, I think it's always best to stay under a sheikh or scholar, who can guide you to these matters, because we sometimes may think we've understood something, but really, if we have to understand the levels at which these scholars studied. I don't even know, subhanAllah, if we can do that nowadays, if we have the ability. I mean, we hear remotely of sheikhs around the world that do this, but I think, subhanAllah, we just, I would say we just scrape the surface, in comparison to the scholars at that time. So most certainly, I think, whichever madhabs we have come about practicing. So, sometimes we're unable to recognize it, or I think there was a question earlier, how will we know if our parents have no idea who they're following? Then you can usually tell by the opinions you're following. So what I mean by that is by how you make wudu, or how you do your salah, or certain opinions you follow. You can locate the opinions and perhaps then refer to a sheikh who can advise you, and not make these kind of decisions alone, where you'll be left alone, and it'll be difficult to know which resources to go to, and basically you just need guidance with these matters, I think. But one other thing I just want to add, and then I'll finish there, is that it points out the importance of seeking knowledge for every Muslim. So we know that it's a fardul ayn, so it's an obligation on every Muslim to seek education. And I think it's for this reason that, yes, alhamdulillah, the great Imams have left a legacy and have left us a structure to follow, but really I think it shows how much we've lost over the time, and the ability to understand these concepts, and to be able to discuss things at a scholarly level, if you like. So this is something we need to endeavor, not just brothers but sisters also, in whatever capacity you may, whether it's weekend classes like with the Q-Iman, or whether evening classes, or whether it's something you take on full time. But I think it's a lifelong obligation that we shouldn't put away, because it's one of those things where you think, I'm going to come back to it at a particular convenient time. That convenient time will never come. This is a part of our lives, like I said, which is fard. And if you make it an important pillar of your life and just incorporate into your daily life, inshallah, I think Allah will facilitate that. So I will just end on that. I can't recall if there is anything else to say. So really just the importance of understanding and having a teacher and, you know, of studying to understand the madh-habs as well. And I think there's a question, I'll just answer that, with regards to doing salam wudu. So what I meant by that was with what Ustad Farhan mentioned earlier, when we perform wudu or, you know, when we pray salah. So we know in the Quran, you know, the commandments are to perform salah and make wudu. However, the Sahaba, they took it from the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's instructions. And then, of course, it was how they interpreted it. And so we find that the scholars all interpreted these things differently. So we might have some of the Imams, I won't go into the details because I don't remember them all at this point, is so, you know, they differ in how you do your wudu, the tartib, for example. You know, not everybody agrees that there is a tartib to do it in, or that, you know, certain points are fard or sunnah. So there will be differences in these, but like we said, these are the branches which we differ in, and what you will find is that the foundations are what we all agree on. So yes, if you could add to that, Jazakumullah khairan, Ustad Farhan.
Salia, just one more question.
Yeah.
Some people are asking, if you're confused, by the way, I just want to mention Salia is one of our senior teachers. So, and Sheikh Mishka and Salia, I'm in the middle of two very senior teachers. So, it's a bit.
No, astaghfirullah.
I would like to hear first Salia's point and then Sheikh Mishkat's point on this. That because this is a true dilemma, right? Practically speaking, we can talk academically what we want, but if there are some people who are confused, right? They're genuinely confused. They may not know what their parents' madhab are, or they're not in contact with their parents or whatever. Yeah. If they're really confused in terms of their starting point, where do they begin their journey?
Yeah, I've messaged. I messaged that you should first of all go with someone that you trust, your Imam, your close local Imam. If you're in contact with the Imams or the local mosque, or someone that is trusted. As well as begin your search for studying. I think there's never, you know, there's no end to study. You know, we can begin at any time. And, you know, it's not just a bunch of rituals that we're doing. You know, it's something we need to, I think the deeper understanding of the deen is very important. And, you know, I remember our Asati, they used to always remind us the saying of Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. He used to say, well, a lot just about Arabic language, just Arabic. He said, you know, he's the famous maqala. He said, rahimahullah, he said, اللغة العربية من الدين ومعرفتها فرض واجب. And then he goes on to say, وما لا يتم الواجب إلا به فهو واجب. That you know, Arabic language is from the religion, from the deen. And and therefore it is to know it or to seek it and to learn it is fardun wajib. Why? He says because, for example, I'll give you an example. So without giving you all these Arabic words, if we were to pray our salawat, all of us here who are attending today, alhamdulillah, and most Muslims know how to recite Surah Al-Fatiha, and they know how to read salah and pray. Subhanallah, you know how to pray, you know how to, you know, say Subhana Rabbil Ala, or some of you maybe not, but, you know, by repeating Subhanallah, those words, and we only pray in Arabic, we don't pray in any other language. And therefore, the bare minimum we need to do is to learn Arabic to pray every day 5 times a day. So therefore, he says, وَمَا لَا يَتِمُّ الْوَاجِبُ إِلَّا بِهِ فَهُوَ وَاجِبٌ. That whatever cannot be completed, you know, without it, that in and of itself becomes wajib and fard. So learning Arabic became fard for us for that particular time. And in that sense, so for us to have a good understanding of our deen and not be, you know, nowadays, you know, it's become a sort of cultural things. To some, you know, it's just, you know, namaz, going to the mosque and coming back, and social sort of gatherings. But there's a deeper, you know, connection that we need to have. Look at Islam and the Quran and the Sunnah that we have, the great Quran that we have, the hadith that we have, the scholars, the giant four scholars that we, Imams, and the great, so many ulama that we have, starting, just beginning that journey towards learning more about Adin, and therefore thereby having a more belief and sort of understanding in what we're doing. You know, our worship has more, you know, we could say we can have more khushu, and we can have more connection to our worship. It's not just a bunch of rituals. We're not robots just doing things for the sake of it. So I think all of these come in, I think, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala open the doors for all of us. You know, not everyone is in the same situation, and I would understand that everyone's learning and even their suffering or their trials and tribulations is relative. And not everyone is, you know, has the tools, but we know, alhamdulillah, knowledge is plenty and available now, not like before when they used to travel. You know, Ahmad ibn Hanbal and all the Imam, what did they do? They traveled, and they really made effort, but we have everything in front of us. So I think I would say start by going to reputable people that you trust, Imams, study by them, learn from them, whichever kitab or book that you have, or you know, Imam, you know, has taught you to pray, go by that, and then learn about your deen. Start learning the Quran, start learning the language, start learning about you know, the basic fiqh, and inshallah you know, take it one step at a time, and don't worry at all, you know, inshallah ta'ala. And then thereafter, once you have the tools and when you have the books available, then you can make a decision yourself, inshallah ta'ala. But I don't know, I mean, you can maybe, you guys can help me here.
So Salih, would you, first of all,
I just wanted to add something really basic. I don't know if we may have missed this, but I think just going back to simply what, I'm not sure if you may have mentioned this earlier, what a madhab is. So I think Ustad Farhan did actually, but just for our brothers and sisters, that it tends to be that in the Indian subcontinent, I think the majority follow the Hanafi madhab. And so if this isn't known to you, of course, I think you can tell by your leadership, or like Sheikh Mishkat said, that you can refer to your local Imam, and I think you can get the information from there, or your teachers who you have access to. So I think that's the madhab we tend to follow in the India subcontinent. So we're talking about India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. And of course, if you're beyond that, then you can refer to your Imams again. So that's just going back to, you know, if you need to make a reference as to which madhab you need to study to familiarize yourself with the hukums, then yeah, I think just that really.
I think we've gone quite over. So Ustad, I would like you, you know, a lot of students have patiently sat in, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from all of them. So I'd like you to, with Ustad Salih's permission as well, to, you know, begin with the conclusion or something, or wrapping up. Yeah, please.
No, I mean, wallah, I think it's been a fantastic course, to be honest with you. You know, with these types of seminars, you never know really what you never know what to expect. So first and foremost, thank you everyone for attending. May Allah bless you all. You're, you know, fantastic participants. As my teacher used to say, we are only here because of you. A good teacher is defined by his students, and you know, the barakah, you know, goes to you guys, you know, for attending it whilst you're fasting in the middle of Ramadan on a Saturday. You could have been doing so many things, maybe not because you're in quarantine, but the point is you could have, really and truly been in a position where you could have been doing anything else but this. And you have come here, you've listened to your teachers, and you know, you've become a fantastic and valuable part of the team. Now I say this because at Q-Iman, and I'm going to just take the moment to just mention a few things about Q-Iman. At Q-Iman, we like to say that we're a bit like a family. But once you come, inshallah, you're welcomed into the family, and we like to operate like that together. And I just want to take a moment and look, if you need to go, feel free to go. We're not that type of organization that's going to fundraise or going to shove it down your throat, right? although I have utter respect for organizations that need to do that. Wallahu a'lam, maybe in the future we might need that as well. But I just want to mention a few things about our courses that we're launching. So our main thing that our main system of teaching is the Sunday programs that we have. So we have annual Sunday programs, which is your Arabic Awakened program, followed on, which is 1 year, as you can see on the screen, followed by 2-year Islamic Sciences Diploma program, followed by a final year or specialization program. So the Arabic Awakened program is an intense program where you get to study Arabic grammar, you get to study spoken Arabic, applied Arabic, tajweed, all in one package that will help you to begin your journey in Arabic. You can be a beginner, you can be someone who studied Arabic in the past, but you want to brush up on everything. Whatever your situation may be, the Arabic Awakening program is meant to be there for everyone. Although we will start right from the beginning and work our way up. Bear in mind, it is a Sunday program, so there is, you're only coming in once a week. It's a bit intense. So in order to ensure that you, as a student, get the maximum benefit, what we've done is we've introduced, right from the beginning, we introduced online workshops. So you get 2 online workshops a week in the evenings. So they differ which days. So this year we had Mondays and Wednesdays, 7:30 to 9:30 in the evening. They are optional. They're not core aspect of the course. They are optional, but they're there so that you can, get extra support and review those principles. As the terms go on, they become more and more important because we tend to study different things in those online classes. Once you've done the 1-year Arabic, you can move on and progress on to the Islamic Sciences Diploma, which is basically, Quran, Hadith, and Fiqh, and the subsidiary sciences, Ulum al-Quran, Mustalah al-Hadith, Usul al-Fiqh, along with some ad hoc sciences like Aqidah, Sirah, and Advanced Arabic Grammar. And once you've done that, you then go into the specialization year where we get the very senior teachers to come in and teach specialized, aspects of the program. You pick an area, either fiqh, tafsir, or hadith, and you specialize in the area. And the teachers, whilst you attend all the classes, that's how the system that we've developed. You attend all the classes, but you choose to research in a particular area, and you produce a dissertation at the end of the year on your chosen area. We also have a number of part-time courses that we're launching. So if you go to the web, this is the website, by the way, yeah? So you got some of them being advertised here. So we have a course on Arabic from the Quran. We have a course on mantiq, which is logic. We have some online level 1, level 2, as you can see, courses. We have a couple of other courses that we'll be launching very, very soon. So if you keep an eye out on what courses we have. And so a lot of them, some of them are online, but the Arabic, these actual annual programs are not online, they're on-site. All our other modular courses are online. These ones are on-site, and then you have supplementary online learning. Inshallah, by September, all of that will be gone. Your quarantine will be over, so inshallah, you'll be able to attend. Last but not least, a big part of our learning experience is the spiritual aspect. And what do I mean by the spiritual aspect? What I mean by that is suhbah or companionship. So we take it quite seriously that an important part of learning Islam is to improve your etiquettes, mannerisms, your general tarbiyah, right? And so that you're nurtured to be an upstanding individual. You're well-rounded in every regard, academically, physically, spiritually. That's the idea, right? So part of how we do things is we try and ensure that there's an intimate relationship between the teacher and the student, where there is a lot of concern and development between the two, to the best of our abilities. Of course, there may be shortcomings. May Allah, forgive all of that. So part of that program is we do halaqas, right? Almost every Sunday after the lesson, we have halaqas. We try and do extra lessons. Like throughout the quarantine, we've had lots of online lessons that we've been doing to ensure that the students are plugged in and still continuously learning. We do lots of retreats. So last December, the December that just went by, we were in Wales. Before that, we were in Hull. Before that, we were in Lake District. Before that, we were in Cornwall. And what we do is we book out these hostels, we take our students there, we have excursions during the day, halaqat in the evening, and it's a real hands-on experience where everybody gets together, cooks together, cleans together, and we try and have a blast, but also ensure that within, of course, the parameters of the Sharia, where lines are maintained, of course, but at the same time have a spiritual and educational experience. We are also in the middle of launching some educational retreats. You'll see them on the website. As of yet, we have not launched any educational retreats. Every year we've planned to do it, but abroad is very difficult. So this year we had Turkey, institute called Akdem Istanbul. They got Syrian scholars there. It's still on the agenda, but because of the whole coronavirus thing, things have really been set back for us. So we have Morocco and Turkey in the in the pipeline for us, inshallah, to do like a month educational retreat as well. So all of that is part of your spiritual and academic development. Now, I've kind of just rushed through everything. If you'd like to attend, please go on the website. The applications are all open now. What I will say is please make your mind up, because every year, myself, Sheikh Mishkat, we all end up turning people away because we have limited spaces. I'm talking about physical chairs that I can put in the classroom, right? There's only so much we can put, and it can get really claustrophobic if you're not putting, if you have too many people. So if you're interested, please ensure that you take the relevant advice. You can give us a phone call, drop an email if you want more advice, and we can try and help you to the best of our abilities. Other than that, I'm done. May Allah bless you all. Thank you so much, Sheikh Mishkat and Ustad Saliha. And I would have said thank you to Ustad Shabir, he's not here. Thank you to my admin team who, in the backdrop, have been tirelessly ensuring everything's working hard and giving me lots of warnings about going over time every moment. Thank you so much. May Allah bless you. Sheikh Mishkat, Salih, would you guys like to give some closing remarks, please?
No, just a big thank you. I did message on the. I am messaging on the group. So I am messaging on the group. Sorry, as much as I can. If we have not answered any of your questions, if you kindly email us, then inshallah we'll endeavor to answer all your questions, because obviously with time we need to close up. So but thank you so much once again for everyone attending, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala weigh up on the scales of your rewards for all of us, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you.
Salih, would you like to mention something?
Yeah, if it's okay, can I just quickly mention the hadith I mentioned? I think there was a query. It was about the hadith, what was it? Laysa ala mustakrahin al-talaq. So what I want to say is Imam Malik used this as an evidence for giving fatwa on not having to follow the rulings of when you're forcefully, what's the word? When you forcefully have to give bay'ah to someone. So it was basically opposing the ruler at that time. And that's why he was punished or flogged before giving out that fatwa. And I think somebody was sent as a spy to check whether he was still giving out this ruling, and he did, and so he was taken by the Khalif and punished. So that was the evidence he used for the fatwa, which was that a talaq given forcefully is not valid in his opinion. So it's just a clarification. And Jazakumullah khairan for giving me this opportunity to share in this reward, and to Q-Iman for all the hard work. So Jazakumullah khairan for to all the students for joining us. Assalamu alaikum.
Just one thing that came to my mind I'd like to mention is, when you're doing a lot of research about the Imams, and I'm sure all the Asatidha had to do a lot of selection there are so many opinions on certain things that you got to be very selective on, okay, to me, this is the most authentic opinion. But as you go through your journey, you will find different narrations saying, different dates, different ages, different aspects. The vast majority of what each speaker said is more or less on point. But in the finer details, you will find different, discussions and opinions. So don't get scared when you see something like, oh my God, I didn't hear this, or maybe this is different. Wallahi, you open a book like Al-Dhahabi Siyaru A'lam Nubala, which in its full form is like 20, 30 volumes. You'll find a bucket load of information there. However, having said that, I hope that we can take the Imams as an example of people who worked extremely hard. And I think that's the real message that all of us tried to say. You know, to talk about how hard they worked and the legacy that they left behind. Me and you, we're not different. Hum rijal, nahnu rijal. They're men, we're men. They're people, we're people. Right? We are no different. There's no reason why you can't reach the same level. The only level you cannot reach is the Sahaba. And of course, not the Prophets. But you can reach any other level below that. Where are the Abu Hanifas and the Shafi'is and the Malikis and the Hanbalis or the Imam Ahmad Hanbal of today? Where are the people who worked that hard, sacrificed every ounce of their life for the deen today? That's what we need. That's what we need. Yeah? Otherwise, thank you all. May Allah bless you. I'm gonna turn this off now, and I'm gonna end the meeting for everyone. Asatidha, inshallah, I'll catch up
Thank you so much. Accept it, inshallah. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.